It's time to party. When we heard that George Best was 50, we thought, let's make a night out of it. Angus Deaton is your guide to Best Night.
George Best is 50. This is his night. We kick off the evening with The Best Thing. Michael Parkinson leads us through a profile of the life and times of Bestie. Friends, critics, hairdressers, lovers and wives paint an unmissable picture of the great ball maestro.
I said to him, you have to go. And I sent him home to England. I stayed in America. But God bless George, he comes home to England, he's here for a week, he meets Miss World and they fall madly in love. And I'm sitting in California going, only he could do this. Only George.
Then it's 10 of the best. We dissect George's finest goal-scoring moments and invite you to phone in and vote for the all-time best. Pick the same as George and you could win the shirt off his back. Next, we tell the story of George Best's team, double-double winners and one of the most famous football clubs in the world, in the Manchester United football family tree.
The hardest part was getting rid of the older players, because it's a wonderful club, wonderful supporters, and it's very hard to get players to leave Manchester United. Easy to get them to come there, but no one wants to leave it, because when you leave a club like that, be it as a player or as a coach or as a manager, there's only one way you go, and that's downtown.
George Best would probably make most people's fantasy 11, but find out who's in George's dream team when Johnny Vaughan reveals all over a pint down the pub with a few mates.
Well, that he stopped his career when he did, because if you actually follow his injuries, the next injury he was due for was actually spontaneous human combustion.
Well, yeah, you're right, it was the only one left.
"21 years since their previous encounter, King of the Chat Show Michael Parkinson goes head-to-head with Best once more.
What amount were you drinking? Did you recollect? Do you recall?
The glass never emptied. It was as simple as that.
You would start with it for breakfast?
As soon as I'd get up, yeah, which was usually late. And there was always somewhere. I mean, if you wanted to drink, you'd always find somewhere. The licensing laws were the old ones then, but there was always somewhere.
Before the final whistle, there's a chance to see George in his best ever match. Not the 1968 European Cup final, but the rarely seen 1966 triumph over Benfica in Lisbon.
Here comes Best again. What a player this boy is, he's got another!
So here's how they line up for Best Night.
I would like a place I could come up on, have a conversation on the telephone, wake up every day, that would be a star.
But first, the life and times of George Best in The Best Thing.
Picked the ball up when nothing was on and has gone through to drag his side up from the depths of despair. 2 down after 9 minutes. They lead now 3-2.
more than the genius that is George Best. Has there ever been a player who combines the courage, the flair, the speed and the finish that George Best brought all together in one match last night? Is this then the finest player in the world today?
George Best was more than a footballer. He was a mini-series waiting to be written. He was the man who could beat everyone but himself.
Best, once you got on that stage, it really was like, I suppose, a pop singer, you know, when he goes in front of all these thousands of people. Best, he was that. He knew that he had the ability. He could do whatever he wanted to do. At times, of course, you couldn't get the ball from him at all. You'd shout for him, he wouldn't get it. But when he went on a run, he was absolutely superb. Riding tackle after tackle. Bestie, I think this is the one I think he lays it off and should have. I think Bobby tried to play it back to him, but he didn't quite get there. Had a go at it, and I think gets knocked down at the end, but brilliant.
He's a fantastic dribbler. There are a lot of really good footballers, you know, that are good runners and good shooters of the ball, good passers of the ball. But the thing that really immediately impresses young people, especially, are somebody who can dribble a ball, who can actually go past a person without anybody else's help, and who can do it themselves.
That is a genius!
He seemed to make the ball do what he wanted to do. In all my experience in football, I have never seen a player who could beat a man or men so close and in so many ways.
From his 14, 15 months he was chasing after a ball, and as each year went by he just got to be probably more crazy about football. And if he ever wanted to find George, he just looked up around the street and he was in the field up around with the ball, winter, summer, whatever.
George and I first met at the Craigie ground here when we were approximately 11 years of age. It was quite possible for them to get sort of 200 or 300 people from the estate come out and watch the game. And we soon noticed they had one boy by the name we all know now of George Best, who sort of had particular talent. And when he received the ball, these 200-300 people sort of got very, very excited and obviously knew a lot more about him than what we did.
Bob Bishop's job was to find footballers. He thought he'd seen everything until he clapped eyes on George Best.
Down in the shipyard, this fella Riverter used to tell me about this fella George Best. They said, Bob, this man is magnificent, he's a man among men. Well, after that I decided he was one of the best boys I'd ever seen.
George Best and Eric McMurdy were sent for a 2-week trial to Manchester. Best's first impression of the town he would eventually paint red was not a good one. He felt uneasy and out of place. At Old Trafford, he was intimidated by the senior players. Within 24 hours, Best returned home. It wasn't the only time he would turn his back on a problem.
When we got to Manchester, we were a little bit overawed, to say the least, to be with sort of Bobby Charlton and Dennis Law. It's a long way from the Craigie estate to sort of Old Trafford, you know. And I'm afraid we just couldn't settle, and we decided that we would come home perhaps too quick.
He had got homesick, and the fact that, like any other youngster that age, that was acceptable and understandable. I do know for another year at least, he still felt a bit homesick.
Manchester United were not about to give up. Bob Bishop had described the boy as a genius. They wanted to see if he was right. In February 1961, Best settled into digs with Mrs. Fullaway. She thought he was just another lodger. Matt Busby, a wise old owl, knew differently.
I hate making predictions about these things when a boy's so young, but this boy has got everything to make a great player. And some little time ago, Tom Finney thought he was the best young player I've seen for many years, and I agree with him.
United were rebuilding the team. They had lost half of the team, of course, in the Munich air disaster in 1958. So it was a period for Sir Matt Busby to rebuild the side. And all of a sudden, this young boy called George Best came on the scene. It was the ideal time for him to come into the side because it was, as I say, it was rebuilding. It didn't have the players there.
George Best made his debut at the age of 17, the very week the Beatles had their first hit. It was the start of an extraordinary adventure for all of us.
To McCready. Best with McCready, and McCready's made a catch, and it's a magnificent goal. Best, what a magnificent goal! A truly brilliant piece of Creran forward to Best. Oh, he's going to get number 5, yes! Beautiful football by the young outside right, George Best. That is the boy with the Beatle haircut. Best moving forward, he's free at the moment. There's Best, a good move. And a fine goal. A fine goal. There's the scorer, George Best.
I only started going to matches in, would have been about 1966, around that time. But before that we weren't allowed as nuns to be going to such a thing as a football match. So Sir Matt used to invite me, and it used to give me a place in the director's box. And then at the interval we went into the director's lounge, so I met a lot of the players there. Sir Matt Busby was quite excited when George came to Manchester United, and he said that the makings of a wonderful player in him, and he hoped he would stay at the club. He told me he was one of the best footballers that he had ever met, and he said he's better than Pele.
At first, no one understood what was really happening to George Best. There had never been a footballer with his appeal. He was tailor-made for the 60s. He worked hard at his game. The popular myth that he only thought about football on a Saturday afternoon took no account of the hours he spent working on his skills. He loved football, and it was beginning to reward him. The shy, working-class lad from Belfast was starting to blossom, in more ways than one.
The team had gelled, you know, Bestie had come into the side, and all of a sudden, from being a non-event team, we won the cup in '63, and then for about 5 years then, it was an excellent side. And probably the best we ever played as a team was in the quarter-final against Benfica, when we had beat them at Old Trafford 3-2. They were a team that contained more or less the whole of the Portuguese national team. And we absolutely thrashed them. We beat them on their own ground, but not only beat them, and give them a good thrashing.
Here comes Best again. What a player this boy is, he's got another!
Probably was one of those that George Best came of age in the international scene, because the following day and for then on, I remember he came back with a big sombrero or something from Lisbon, this foolish boy, but he had this big hat, and it was the El Beatle, because it was the time of the Beatles as well. And that it was that game that really put Bestie on the sort of the world stage.
The game in Lisbon transformed a promising footballer into a superstar. This was the moment George Best stepped into the world of showbiz. The media and the public couldn't get enough of him. It didn't take a genius to work out the commercial possibilities. He opened his first shop.
I like to think of myself, you know, as a bit different than everybody else. You know, people come to matches and they're seeing the same, you know, short-haired and smart, well, dark suits and... well, I think that's because I'm more really like, say, you know, maybe a pop star, really.
He became the fifth Beatle and a fantasy figure to teenagers. A hitherto unremarkable part of Manchester became a place of pilgrimage as he opened his second boutique next door to a trendy hairdresser's.
George had fabulous hair. I mean, it was always in great condition, but I mean, he's sort of as fit as a fiddle, isn't it? No, it wasn't at that time anyway. And the thing is with your hair is that if you're well within yourself, then your hair is good as well. But he had fabulous hair, great hair to do. Well, great at that time, great hair to shampoo anyway. Yeah, and obviously, shampooing George was George Best, wasn't it? I mean, the best thing since sliced bread.
George would turn up at the shop after he'd finished training, and it was like a pop star arriving every day. You know, there were people just walking past the shop, just trying to catch a glimpse and wanting to speak to him and getting autographs, which was all okay because there were loads of young girls walking about, which pleased George no end.
It wasn't just the look and the style of George Best that made him successful. By now, his great talents as a footballer were in full flower. With Manchester United, he was surrounded by great players. When he played for his country, he couldn't rely on such a supporting cast. Typically, he used this disadvantage to produce a one-man show that was breathtaking, even by his standards.
And Best fighting for everything. Here he goes again. I think that ball's tied to his feet.
It was just one of those nights that you, I suppose, any parent would dream about for their particular son. And if it hadn't been for the brilliance of the Scottish goalkeeper in that night, which I thought he was really outstanding, to me I would think that it was a battle of two people in the pitch. Really, it was George Best versus Simpson.
Oh, certainly, Best is the most dynamic marksman on the pitch today. Tillman! Now here comes Best. And he still manages to get that shot in. How on earth he does it? Best. Oh, a great shot. Well, Best is really rattling them in. He's the one danger man, but what a save by Simpson.
In 1968, Matt Busby realised his greatest ambition, to win the European Cup. 10 years after the Munich air disaster, Manchester United beat Benfica. The game turned on a moment of inspiration from Best.
Now Best. Oh, he's got a great chance. Oh, he must. He has.
When United won the European Cup, I asked Sir Matt, could the little boy see it? So he said, certainly. So we went down to Old Trafford and we saw the cup. They all handled the cup. And then we thought we'd like a photograph. So we had a photographer with us. So some of the little boys were so small, when they were standing behind each other, you could hardly see them. So I said, any chance of getting a bench? And George was the one that ran straight away and got the bench for us.
After 2 minutes, and that's not the kind of chance that George Best misses.
He's fantastic. He did everything. Quick, strong, aggressive, could defend, could tackle, great in the air, scored goals. When he's on a run like this, only a tank would stop him. 5 of them who goes past. Kid knows he's going to shoot, holding people on with his right hand, twisting, turning. And when there's no one else to beat or they get a little bit tired, he just says, well, I'll put it in the back of the net and leave it there. Brilliant.
It is impossible to overstate the impact George Best made on the game or the virtuosity of his talent. There wasn't anything he couldn't do. He was quick, two-footed, and beautifully balanced. He could hit long and short passes with equal precision and weight. He was swift and fearless in the tackle. He was as imaginative and whimsical in midfield as he was economical and deadly in front of goal. He could turn a defender inside out with his dribbling skills. In Paddy Creran's classic phrase, the opposition sometimes suffered from twisted blood. Above all, he was a showman.
And Best has taken his shoe off. He played that with his stocking feet. Well, there's no end to Georgie Best cheek.
Off the field, business was booming. In 1969, he opened another boutique, the perfectly named George Best Rogue. It was an excuse for another party. There were now 2 George Bests, one the footballer, the other the playboy. The question was, could he balance the 2 lifestyles? But George Best wasn't concerned with riddles. He was having fun.
Eva, George has described you as a perfect woman.
Yes, I know.
What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't know.
She is.
I just remember having the best times that I've ever had in my life. I had the greatest fun, and just the best times to be with George was such fun. You just can't put it into words. Eddie will tell you.
We were all terrific mates, living in Wonderland. Ordinary lads from Salford, finding themselves mixing with the stars from television as 18 and 19-year-olds, meeting people who would never have had the opportunity in the past to done, and being there on centre stage alongside George Best, the living legend.
He would get phone numbers slipped in his pocket. That happened all over the world. I've seen that happen on one of the trips to America. There was the most prettiest girl you've ever seen in your life. Frank Sinatra was seeing her, and he sent his chauffeur down to this club to pick her up. But George had claimed her, and there was no way she was getting in the car with the chauffeur. She wasn't going anywhere. I don't know whether
too late was the cry.
Yeah.
The thing about George, he could operate in his own right without being a footballer. He's a very good-looking young man with lots of conversation. It wasn't difficult for George Best to form an attraction with a young lady. Didn't have to be George Best the footballer.
Playboys and sex symbols are not supposed to live in digs. George Best solved the paradox in his life when he left Mrs. Fullaway and built his own house. He thought he was making a home. In reality, he created a goldfish bowl for the world to come and gawp at.
When he moved into Bramhall, every opportunity we would get to go up there and go past, just to see if I could get a glimpse of him, basically, because there were big plate glass windows in the lounge. And then when I was learning to drive, one of my friends reminded me the other day that if I was going out on a little test run, it'd always have to be past George Best.
It takes a lot to get George Best away from football, but one thing always works: his mum's cooking, especially when it's Cookstown sausages. Dependably fresh, dependably delicious. George loves their pure meaty goodness. So do all the family, cause Cookstown sausages make a real big meal.
What the man means is Cookstown are the best family sausages.
Buy Cookstown sausages.
By now, the face of George Best was used to sell everything from chewing gum to crisps to sports books and fashions. He was that most valuable of commodities, a bloke who appealed to both sexes. The men worshipped him as a great footballer. The women were more interested in his sex appeal. Nowadays, he will be represented by some international management group and will be a millionaire in many currencies. As it was, he put his affairs in the hands of Ken Stanley, who operated out of Huddersfield.
We turned down far more things than ever we took on. It would have been impossible to take them all. And the phone actually never stopped ringing for George. And we moved into men's fashion, boys' fashion. There are so many numerous things. I mean, we had aftershave.
Always the best for Georgie. 4. Men's grooming aids. Real masculine. Aftershave, hairspray, talc, the lot. 4 brings out the best in a man.
You know, George was George, and of course it used to drive you up the wall sometimes because he'd no longer signed a contract for aftershave, then he grew a beard the following day, you know, so you had problems as you went along the way. But nevertheless, you could actually put George's name on steroids and sell them to bungalows, and you could. I mean, it was fantastic, the appeal it had.
Best!
As you can well imagine, we had enormous success with the boots, with George's endorsement. And as the sales started to grow, and we thought it'd be a nice opportunity to present George with a pair of golden boots. It was described as the golden boots for the golden boy.
Okay. Congratulations. Excellent. And I hope it won't be long before we'll be presenting you with the millionth there.
I hope so. Thanks very much.
George had such enormous appeal that he could equally put his name to a range of ladies' fashion shoes as he had to a range of football boots. And the time came to do the launch. Everybody was there except George. George, unfortunately, was detained elsewhere. I must say he was seen later that morning by one of my brothers walking down arm in arm with a young lady at the railway station.
Can I have a kiss now, please?
No.
The 3 main aims I had for George was that he would go out of the game as the greatest player ever, secure for life, and be happy thereafter. The fact that it didn't happen that way was, in my opinion, one of life's tragedies. It really was.
No one knows what set George Best on the downhill slope. He says he was disenchanted with poor management at the club. Others will claim it was the booze. Whatever the reasons, from the start of the 1970s, he began the process of leaving Manchester United. It was to become a long-running saga.
I had no contact. He's made no contact. And as I said to all you lads this morning, he knows where to find me. The door's there waiting for him. Yeah. I'm not going looking for George Best.
The Irish international was due to meet Sir Matt Busby to explain his actions over the last few days. But instead, when he should have been in Manchester seeing Sir Matt, he was here in Islington in North London at the flat of a friend, Miss Sinead Cusack, the actress, explaining to her his problems at Manchester United.
He'd been selected to play at Chelsea, and George had decided that he didn't want to play. I'm not sure, I can't just recall whether any of his friends were aware that he wasn't going to play. But a day or two went by, and it was quite obvious from the press that George hadn't met up with the team to play Chelsea Football Club. And a couple of days later, we got a phone call from George, and he was in London, and he wanted his mates somehow or other to get him out of there. And we duly drove down, a couple of pals in a Jaguar, and an inspector took us into the house, and George was there with Sinead, looking very, very drained and very, very under pressure. And we somehow managed to get out of the house in the car with a police escort and back up north.
Best! Charlton. Best! Kid on the far post. Best near in. And still he made it.
He returned to Manchester and Manchester United, but it didn't last long. Best was big news. Once the attention paid to him by the media had been part of the buzz. Now it had become a nuisance. His behaviour became increasingly unpredictable. He took off for Marbella, pursued by a plane load of Fleet Street's finest. 2 days before his 26th birthday, he announced he was finishing with football. At least, that's the story he sold the Daily Mirror.
I built the image in the first place, and it backfired on me. The whole thing's turned about. I suppose someone might try and make me change my mind, but like I said, I've made my mind up, so that's it.
But once again, the familiar ritual was played out. George repented. Manchester United forgave him. To prevent him escaping into his old lifestyle, they insisted he move in with Paddy Crerand and his young family.
They've just said move in for a couple of months and see what happens, see if you can relax and, you know, get a bit of sleep and look after myself.
Is Paddy going to have to go around with you and put a curfew on you, or just report what time you come home, or what?
Not really. It's just, I suppose, to make me feel more at home, you know, and a bit more relaxed. Obviously, he'll make a note of the times I come in and be a bit strict with me.
George Best was too old for chaperones. By the end of 1972, both he and Manchester United had become weary of an increasingly acrimonious relationship. First, United placed him on the transfer list. Then George announced his retirement. 9 months later, he was back at Old Trafford under a new manager. There are no quiet chapters in the George Best story.
Time's a great healer. And plus the fact, you know, is it a terrible crime today to give someone another chance?
I think of this time, if I do anything wrong or blow it this time, I think everybody's just going to get so completely sick, they're going to, you know, say that's it.
He could still beat people. He had great vision in his passing, short and long. But he couldn't leave people for dead. When he beat them, he couldn't get away from them. And after a couple of games, I looked at him once or twice, and before the games began, there was a bit of fear.
I just remember seeing him come off the park after games. We would meet in the players' lounge afterwards, and his eyes were black. He was absolutely, he'd just given everything that he could possibly give. And he'd just say the odd thing, well, nobody's playing with me. You know, I'm putting balls into space and nobody's running into space. I just feel as though I'm wasting my time.
The crowning blow came when we played Plymouth Argyle in the third round of the Cup at Old Trafford. I told them all to report for a pre-match meal. It was a normal procedure. They were all there as usual. George didn't come at all. He wasn't there at 2:30. I was in the dressing room about 5 minutes and the chat to one or two players, and there was a knock at the door, and he was standing there with a young lady, and he certainly was in no condition to play football. And I said, George, there's no way you can play in the condition that you're in. I said, I'll see you on Monday. Monday arrived and I never saw him again. So it was a unanimous decision by the board and myself that we cancelled his registration and just let him go free.
Comes the best. And it's there. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Dunstable Town Football Club has had a major facelift since it was announced 2 weeks ago that George Best is to play tonight. The club has spent £3,000 on pulling the grounds into shape to welcome the star and the crowd of 8,000 that they're expecting tonight. Biggest crowd last season was 349. And when the star arrived, he joined teammate Jeff Astle to approve the new look Dunstable.
George was the best player in the world, 27 years of age, at the peak of his career. He could have gone anywhere. and he chose Dunstable because he didn't want to play anybody that might rival Manchester United, and you have to respect that, don't you? That he was so much a Manchester United person that he didn't want to go anywhere that was going to hurt Manchester United.
George Best joined Fulham in the second division. He was in first division company with Rodney Marsh and Bobby Moore. For a brief and glorious time, he reminded us of his genius. It was his swan song.
It was one season. It was fantastic. It was like a showbiz team. It was great. And the crowds at Fulham went from about 4,000 to 25,000 people. We had some great wins. It all exploded after about 6 months, of course, because it couldn't go on.
That's the best. Oh my goodness, he hit the post.
Everybody remembers the great Fulham-Hereford game when we completely outplayed them in a tremendous game, and everybody was laughing, the referee was laughing. It was a tremendous day for football.
And now Best. Hurdled beautifully over Tyler. Took it off Rodney Marsh. Marsh coming back to tackle him.
A few newspapers said things which weren't very complimentary to me. And I thought, why the hell should I stay here and go through all that again, you know?
Yes.
And when I can go to America, earn 20 times as much as I could earn here.
Yes.
And not get crucified for doing it.
Presenting a 60s #1 hits weekend.
I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations.
For a time, it seemed America might provide the perfect refuge where Best could rebuild his career. He joined the Los Angeles Aztecs. He also became part owner of a bar. Different country, same old George.
George liked California, and he liked the beach area especially because he was kind of anonymous here. And he could walk from restaurant to restaurant, bar to bar.
In 1978, George met and married Angela MacDonald James, a girl from Essex who was working as personal trainer to the singer and actress Cher.
George was playing for the LA Aztecs when I first met him. And so, because football was so new in America, it was very informal. And I would sit on the bench with the team and I'd scream and yell at the other players, "Don't you kick my George," you know.
You know, when you see players like Trevor Francis and Dennis Stewart, Beckenbauer playing here, obviously the standard's getting there.
This is the type of soccer for you, then?
It is, you know, I'm getting towards, you know, I'm 33 next month, and the fact that I'm still enjoying it is more important to me than, you know, winning European Cups or championships.
Long spells where he didn't drink here, and he was really into being fit. I mean, really fit. And of course, as any soccer player will tell you, there's not that great deal of effect that alcohol will have on you, as long as you're working it out every day. So during the periods of when we played, if he was drinking, it didn't really have an effect on him. The effect came when, in the off-season, when he wasn't playing and he had a lot of time on his hands.
I think that alcohol was a problem from the very beginning, but I was very young. I knew nothing about alcohol. I knew nothing about alcoholics. I thought he was just one of the boys and needed, as all women do, to settle down, to be mothered. You know, I can look after him, I can take care of him, I'll change him. I did all that. I had the Florence Nightingale syndrome going. But it was a mistake.
When Angie gave birth to their son Callum, there was a danger stability would break out in George Best's life. Without trying, he transformed a promising situation into a disaster.
I like it out here because no one really knows who my dad is, so that means they don't really know who I am. And I wouldn't have to be known as George Best's son.
Let me see.
But then again, I get sort of bored of it, and I like the fame type thing, so I go out and visit my dad all the time, and I love it. Like, we go to some games, and people always crowd around, or we go to lunches and they even ask me for my autograph just because I'm his son and I might grow up to be some soccer star like him. I didn't really need my dad to teach me soccer. I'm glad he didn't actually, because if he had have, I would have tried so hard to be as good as him. And I mean, I would feel real bad if I wasn't as good as him, and I'd always have to be as good as him. But whenever I go out there, we usually have a kick around, and that's really fun to do. I wanted my dad around, but just the fact that he was an alcoholic, and I mean, I love him more than anything, but the fact that he was an alcoholic, I didn't really want to live with him. Just me and my mom was fine.
Callum was a year old, and I was taking him, I hadn't seen George in a week, and I was taking Callum to the doctor for his checkup. And I'm driving down the street in San Jose. It's raining, it's a really dreary, miserable day. And in the middle of the street, the two yellow lines, there's this creature walking towards me, soaking wet, miserable, just huddled over like this, like a homeless person. And I realized it was my husband. And then I looked at my son and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't look after two babies. So the big one has to go. So he did. I said to him, you have to go. And I sent him home to England. I stayed in America. But God bless George, he comes home to England, he's here for a week, he meets Miss World, and they fall madly in love. And I'm sitting in California going, only he could do this. Only George.
The Miss World George Best fell for and wooed was Swedish blonde Mary Stavin. As in the past, the course of true love was not smooth. The tabloids had a feast. At the age of 37, the man many regarded as the greatest soccer player there had ever been joined Bournemouth. He was a spent force in all but his own imagining. What he hadn't lost was the ability to talk a good game.
I've had my problems off the field, personal problems, but they seem to be behind me. You know, it's like a day-to-day thing.
In 1984, a year after his comeback, George Best entered the darkest period of his life. After failing to turn up for a court appearance for drink driving, he assaulted a policeman and then jumped bail.
George Best's appeal against his prison sentence has been rejected. He'll spend Christmas behind bars. He was appealing against the severity of the sentence, 12 weeks for driving with excess alcohol, assaulting a police officer and jumping bail.
This was the moment George Best was forced to confront reality, to look at himself and speak frankly of what he saw. It was the first time anyone had seen him looking frightened. He was to spend 7 weeks in prison. When he was released, he declared with great conviction he had given up the bottle. There were not many who believed him.
All my problems have been drink related, and if I can stay off that, there's no reason. I'm very, very busy still. I mean, I'm fed up reading this rubbish about me being a fallen idol, as if I'm lying in the gutter and I don't work. I earn more today than any other footballer in England.
Now, the last time you were on here, you'd just come out of the old calaboose.
Prison, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, did that experience, do you feel, do you any good? Or?
No, it's not nice to be in prison.
No.
What are you laughing at?
Alcoholism is a disease. It's not something he does to upset us all. It's not something he does on purpose to annoy the media or the world or his family or friends.
Terry, I like screwing, all right?
All right. So what do you do with your time these days?
Screw.
I see. Ladies and gentlemen, George Best.
You know, in his heart, he's a child. He ends up feeling like a naughty boy all the time, you know, after anything he's ever done wrong. And the major things that have gone wrong, as in the Wogan show, and a couple of other things, have hurt him very badly. To the extent that, to this day, George hasn't seen the Wogan show. I do have it on tape, but he always refused to see it. He doesn't want to know.
To any other person in the world, that would have spelt total disaster and the end of a career. To George Best, it relaunched him. Because every time that we've been together since then, doing different things with, chat shows or whatever we've done, when he tells the Terry Wogan story, everybody loves it.
It seemed for a time George would marry Mary Shatila. Typically, he did the unexpected and married 23-year-old Alex Percy.
He makes an absolutely fantastic husband. He's brilliant, and he's, what I could ask for. He's generous, he's kind, he's really loving.
I met Alex, and she seemed a bit young. She should have married me instead of my dad, but at first I thought she was just in the picture because my dad was so famous and had money, and she was just there to get it. But then I got to know her last time I was out there, and now that they're married, she's a really sweet girl.
Alex is a doll. She's a sweet thing, and she looks after him, which is what we've all done. And Mary looked after him. And he always picks good women, long-suffering women.
George goes through stages. If things in his life aren't happy, he'll turn to the bottle. It will always be a problem. It's always there. As people say, it is a disease. I just hope, really, that he's learnt to curb it now. I think he knows more about it. I think he knows really how to handle it.
Call me irresponsible. Call me unreliable. Go on and throw in undependable too.
I have to say honestly, I'm proud of George and pleased about his ability and the pleasure he gave to people in his particular field. Just sad about the fact that it didn't go on longer.
I don't know what that charm is. He's George. What can I tell you? And I will always love him, and he will always have a special place in my heart. And I do forgive him, as we all do, but I don't know why.
I would hope that the years ahead of him now would be happy years, and I wish him a very, very happy birthday, and I pray for him every day.
In the end, George Best deserves better than to be celebrated as a man who appeared on television made foolish by drink. For all he pursued the life of a boozer and philanderer, he was, first and foremost, a great athlete and a marvellous entertainer. Anyone who saw him play will remember that above all else.
What a goal to score, and who could score it but George Best? With the skill, the timing, the confidence to take it on and on and on until the net was bare.
Ooh, go on and call me. Yeah! Irresponsible. Yes, I'm unreliable. But it's undeniably true. Oh, I'm irresponsibly mad about you.
Coming up later on Best Night, we hear from George himself as he reflects on his checkered past in a new interview with Michael Parkinson to mark his 50th birthday.
Hold on to your sprouts and get ready to fly high with stars and spies with coded messages.
I can't even say it.
Espionage.
What hold has he got on you?
And strange rituals. Shooting Stars and the Champions, Friday evening from 6 on BBC Two.
You're unbelievable.
Running 5 minutes late, it's Best Night on BBC Two.
Next on Best Night, 10 fans tell us about their favourite George Best goal. Using your skill and judgment, phone in and vote for the one you think is the all-time best. If your choice is the same as George's, you could win an authentic 60s Manchester United shirt signed by George, and a brand new ball now totally ruined by the signatures of some of United's greatest names. Details of the phone numbers to call will be displayed after the goals.
I was about 14 at the time, living in Manchester. My mum sent me to the corner shop for some cornflakes. And on the way there, I met a couple of mates and they said, "Well, come to Southampton to the game." I said, "Yeah, sure. Got my mum's tenner in my pocket, why not?" So I went on the train down to Southampton. It was a cracking game. Bestie got an hat-trick. And the goal I remember most was a ball come in from the wing and he just snatched the ball off the defender. The ball stuck to his boots like a flipper on a pinball machine. Quick shuffle, 1-2, bang. Brilliant goal, brilliant. After the game I thought I'd better phone home. And all my mum could say was, "You went to the shop 6 hours ago, where's me cornflakes?"
Charlton.
Best. George Best made it look so easy, doing a double shuffle that Muhammad Ali would have been very proud of, and just chucking it away for Martin to look at him in sheer disbelief.
Well, I went to the cup final at Wembley. I was a teacher at the time and I thought I'd better tell them I was going to the art gallery in London because I thought Wembley's a sort of gallery and Manchester United are art. And I remember Best's goal very clearly. The goalie came rushing out quite a long way, but George swerved past him with ease. He seemed to stroll towards the goal, and then he rolled the ball with his left foot, just slanted his body. And it seemed to take forever to cross the line. And my husband said, "Oh, they're going to get back." And actually the goalkeeper did get back, but it was too late. The ball went over the line and the goalkeeper was on his tummy.
Now Best. Oh, he's got a great chance! Oh, he must! He has! And Best snapping up that mistake. Look at it from our other angle camera. Oh!
Well, my favourite goal was in an international game against England. Georgie had been in trouble for throwing mud at a referee in the previous game against Scotland. At the time, lesser mortals used to try and stop Georgie by unfair means, and he probably thought he didn't get the protection he deserved. So as a consequence, everybody, especially the press, the media, were putting pressure on the Irish FA not to play him. And the rebel within me was hoping that he would be there. And when he was picked, I was delighted. And I hoped that he would do something really special. And right enough, it happened.
Best just with stars between him and the goal, and he's got a clear chance, and that's running.
In 1970 there was a full-back called Ron Chopper Harris who was really dirty. There was a game at Old Trafford, a League Cup fourth round game, when Bestie was put through from the halfway line. He had to skip over one of Harris's hospital tackles, but he managed to keep his balance and he dummied a few times and he put the ball in the back of the net there. The crowd were going mental. Best was on his knees at the Stretford end, and it's a goal I'll never forget. It'll always send a shiver down my spine. It'll always make me go weak at the knees.
Best is up front. There he is, the defence split. Can he do it? He surely must. What a goal to score, and who could score it but George Best? With the skill, the timing, the confidence to take it on and on until the net was bare.
Of all the goals that George Best scored, I can recall hardly any that was scored with real power. It was usually a case of George using cunning and guile. And perhaps one of the best examples of all was the goal against Tottenham. And I was lucky enough to be on the Stretford end when the goal was scored. And the ball came over and George just brought the ball down on his chest. And as the defenders were moving towards him, he executed a perfect lob over Pat Jennings. A couple of defenders scrambled back, desperately trying to stop the ball, but we could see from behind the goal it was on its way in.
and Collins' header that was. Comes the best. And it's there. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Cooler than a cucumber. It was so deliberate, so beautiful, that it really was one of the gems of the season.
This is a book, such as a number of books I keep on goals. This goal was scored by George Best against Chelsea. It had all the qualities, I think, of a great goal because it had his tenacity. He picked up the ball from a clearance from McCready. He then, in fact, challenged McCready for the ball once. The ball went on towards the back line. He challenged McCready again. And then after the ball moved again towards the byline, he challenged McCready a third time. But this time he moved inside McCready because McCready was about to pass the ball back to the keeper. He actually challenged him. And when the ball went through his legs, having challenged McCready, he picked the ball up on the end of the 25 line, and he actually then lobbed it over the advancing goalkeeper's head into the far side of the net. And I think that goal showed an incredible sense of instinct, anticipation, speed, and also the tenacity of the original challenge.
To McCready. Best with McCready, and McCready's made a catch, and it's a magnificent goal. Best, what a magnificent goal! A truly brilliant piece of football there by Best. There he is, number 11.
30 years ago, I wasn't a butcher, I was a student for the Catholic priesthood. And that involved me in a semi-monastic way of life, which, during the night hours, meant magnum silentium, total silence. Now, I'm afraid that despite magnum silentium, on the night of the match, a transistor radio did make its way into my room. And when that third goal that George scored went in, whoosh, the magnum silentium wasn't simply disturbed, it was shattered.
Here comes Best again. What a player this boy is, he's got another! What a player! 12 minutes gone, and Best surely has now finished the tie.
Well, my favourite Best goal was a disallowed goal. A goal which I think ought to have stood as a proper goal. It was disallowed by the referee, and this is my appeal against the referee's decision. The match was Northern Ireland against England. Gordon Banks was in goal for England, probably the greatest goalkeeper that England's had for many, many years. He had the ball in his hands at the edge of his area. He was about to kick it out when George nipped in, took it off his toes, kicked it over his head, ran round him and headed in the net.
Banks being driven left, and was that a foul? The whistle hasn't gone. Best, and a foul given. And the referee, I feel, didn't actually see what happened. He seemed to have his back turned to the game. An old Best footballing player and sheer impudence there to see. Very questionable, really, whether it was fair or not.
George was the greatest talent the world's ever seen. He was the dilettante, the maverick, the entertainer, but he crystallised the beautiful game. A flawed genius. I rank him with Van Gogh, Maria Callas, Errol Flynn. And here's a goal, the best goal ever, for San Jose Earthquake against Fort Lauderdale. Here's George at his very best.
And it's George Best now. What can he do with this one? He's through into the box. He's round one man. They're queuing up to tackle him. He must score. It's there! Unbelievable! The cheek, the arrogance, the sheer genius of this man, leaving the defence collapsed in a pile around his feet.
My father often used to tell me about the genius of George Best. My only real regret in life is that I wasn't born till 1970, and then maybe I might have been able to watch goals like this in the flesh rather than on that dodgy old black and white television we used to have.
Players are losing this ball in the sun, but it was Best who picked up that kid Flick. driven wide. Yes! Georgie Best has done it again. Less than 7 minutes left and Manchester United take the lead, and Best produced the goal that mattered after what for him has been an indifferent match. What more can you say about George Best?
To vote for the one you think is the all-time best, ring 0891 2299, followed by the number of your choice. So dial 01 for the drag back and shuffle against Southampton, 02 for the European Cup final goal against Benfica in '68, 03 for the jig past Nobby Stiles in England, 04 for George surviving Chelsea's Chopper Harris, 05 for the perfectly timed lob against Spurs, 06 for the impossible angled chip again over Chelsea, 07 for the sweeping run in '66 against Benfica, 08 for the goal that never was, Banks' error in Gordon's favour, 09 for the earth-shattering run for the San Jose Earthquake, and 10 for the run like a knife through butter against Sheffield United. Lines are open for the next hour. The winner will be selected at random from the correct entries, and George will announce the result and lucky winner later this evening after the Parkinson interview.
Running just about 5 minutes later than planned, we're celebrating 50 years on this earth with a football legend, George Best Night, on BBC Two.
A week ago, Manchester United, Bestie's old club, became the first team ever to win the double-double. But for 26 years, the club that was considered the self-styled king of football failed to win the one prize that mattered, the league title. This is the story of those lean years, a story of small victories and big money, brothers in arms and sibling rivalry, an everyday football family history.
I was just overwhelmed, really, seeing my heroes in real life.
It wasn't a case of having to sit down haggling about money or anything like that. It was just a case of, yeah, I'm coming.
You walk into Old Trafford, 60,000 people, you can't hear a word.
I didn't want to leave that boardroom that afternoon without having signed. I really wanted to play for Manchester United.
People talk about the Liverpools and the Tottenhams and the Arsenals, but United is a massive club.
90% of footballers in England would love to join Manchester United, and the other 10% were liars.
Rah, 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 have you heard the latest? Rah, 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 United are the greatest. Rah.
In 1968, Matt Busby, the man who built Manchester United, finally won the European Cup.
With Manchester United.
10 years previously, on a runway in Munich, his team had died whilst pursuing that dream.
Charlton, another!
This was the culmination of all my ideas, my ambitions.
In 1969, Busby moved upstairs to become general manager, leaving the actual football to others.
Who can follow a man like you as manager of United? Oh, I don't know about that.
His legacy was an ageing squad, over-reliant on a star core, which had peaked in Europe. The men the board charged with reinvigorating the club, first Wilf McGuinness and then Frank O'Farrell, wilted in Busby's long shadow. By 1972, the team were sinking fast.
So the Stretford end is stunned into silence.
Busby, now a club director, looked north to his own homeland for a man big enough to fill his shoes. Scotland team manager Thomas Henderson Docherty.
I was offered the salary on the phone before I come down, even before Frank O'Farrell got the sack. I knew, in other words, I knew what I was getting before Frank was leaving me.
He came in and it was like a breath of fresh air after Frank. You know, he was very outgoing, he was very positive, very enthusiastic, and he was wonderful.
He wanted to be
the next manager to put Manchester United back on the trail again, you know. And the way he was going to do it was by building a completely new team.
There's a lot of players cheating. They were on the treatment table all week and passed the fitness test on the Friday and played on the Saturday, and they're back in the treatment table on the Monday. That was a regular routine for them.
I mean, you don't say that about people, about all pros that have done whatever they've done down through their life and maybe had a good career. You don't throw them aside as if they're nothing. You've got to have a great deal of respect for people that have done great things in football.
Docherty faced some difficult decisions, particularly those concerning the future of Busby's Holy Trinity: Denis Law, George Best and Bobby Charlton. The first to read the rooms was Charlton, who saved Docherty a job by retiring.
The first gentleman of football makes his last appearance in the Football League. Bobby Charlton coming out to mark this momentous occasion.
The hardest part was getting rid of the older players, because it's a wonderful club, wonderful supporters, and it's very hard to get players to leave Manchester United. Easy to get them to come there, but no one wants to leave there, because when you leave a club like that, be it as a player or as a coach or as a manager, there's only one way you go, and that's downtown.
The second of the mythical trio to go was Law, or to give him his full title, King Dennis of Old Trafford. He was deposed by Docherty.
Dennis was one of the players I felt, in my opinion, when I took it over Old Trafford, he was swinging the lead.
You're talking about a legend at Old Trafford. What do you do with it? What do you do with a legend?
He seldom trained when I was at the club. He was one of the ones that was on the treatment table.
What happened? I was probably past my best. Good answer, that short but good.
I got him in, told him what I was going to do, give them a free transfer, and I told him early, rather than tell him at the end of the season when there's a rush for free transfer players. I told him in ample time.
He told Dennis that he'd had a new contract the following year and go home, have a good summer. When Dennis got home, saw the television, put in the transfer list.
I've always told the player to his face what I was going to do or what I intended to do. So then when I went to the board with that, it wouldn't come as a shock to them, and they knew that that was on the agenda.
And how did he break the news to you that you were perhaps past your best?
I found out in the newspaper, yes.
And you were pretty unhappy?
Well, you'd be disappointed, wouldn't you?
Meanwhile, Busby had persuaded George Best to return from self-imposed exile. He was proving to be a headache.
He came back, and it was a mistake. And then I decided that we'd let him go.
Those of you who are fed up with George Best and have written telling me so will be relieved to learn that Tommy Docherty left him out of our next cup tie.
He left me out because I'd missed training on the Thursday. And I basically I'd said to him, if I don't play, if I'm not good enough to play against Plymouth, I won't play again. And that was the end of it. I left after the game and didn't go back.
Any man at 27 years of age in the prime, and arguably at the time one of the best three players on this earth, who can walk out on the game at 27 years of age just before he's reached his peak, there's got to be something wrong with him.
Docherty could now build a team loyal only to him, bringing in players he could trust from north of the border, cocky youngsters like Lou Macari.
Well, I think, when I came here from Celtic, there was a lot of big stars, and I don't think really that they trained hard enough, and they worked hard enough. I found the training very easy when I came here, simply because no one else wanted to train.
But Docherty still worried that his control was being undermined. Having a staunch Busby loyalist, Pat Creran, for an assistant didn't help.
We'd found a job for him, for the want of a better word. I went along with it, and it was a disaster. The best thing you can do as a manager, if you've got an old pro who's spreading the gospel, the wrong gospel I might add, is to get him on his bike as quickly as you possibly can.
I think at the end of the day it was probably a relief for me because I couldn't put up with it. Just the lies that was going on at the club at that particular time.
Paddy and I fell out over that and were never the same. enemies, really. You know, I was never bitter, but he was. And all I did was my job, saying I'd made a mistake.
Docherty's new blood was not yet circulating properly. In April 1974, his United found themselves on the lip of relegation, facing a Manchester City squad which now included one of their own, King Dennis.
Well, I had to play, but I was a professional player, wasn't I? Had to play in the
Why
game.
didn't you want to play?
Well, of course, it was against United. It was Old Trafford. They were having a bit of a lean time. It could be disastrous for them if they got beat, so I didn't particularly want to play in the game. Had to play.
It was no score, and a few minutes to go, Dennis scored with a back heel.
I remember the ball coming sort of on my left. Somehow he just sort of let it go past him and he flicked his heel.
Dennis has done it!
But I'll never forget the look in Dennis's face. I thought you were supposed to be happy when you scored a goal. But I'll never forget the look as long as I live.
We knew we were going down. I mean, we'd prepared for it from Christmas onwards because we just couldn't win at all. But when it finally happened, when he backheeled that ball in, it was numb. It was an awful feeling.
You lot say you were fairly disappointed.
Well, disappointed, yes. Of course, when the goal went in, the people came on the field and the game got stopped, and by the time they got them all off, the manager at that particular time was Tony Book, and he decided to remove me from the field of play, so that was my last touch ever of a ball in league football.
While the King abdicated, United found themselves in the second division.
I'd never ever been in a relegated team in my whole career. So it was something I wouldn't want again.
I felt personally I deserved the sack for going there because I'd been there about a year, just a year and a bit, and I thought the results in that period of time should have been better than what they were.
He was very positive even in going down. He was very positive. Mind you, he didn't know whether to believe him or not.
But Busby and the board did believe him. They relaxed their recent habit of sacking the manager in times of trouble. Doc's red and white army was on the march.
And the good thing that came out of it, we spent a year in a lower division. We gathered together as a team. Probably as teammates we got better as well.
This year we're going forward and attacking teams because before the games we think we can beat them. I think that's the difference.
Jerry Daly, McElroy!
At the end of a season malleting Fulham, Cardiff and Notts County, the Doc still had unfinished business with Busby's last remaining acolyte, club captain Willie Morgan.
When I came home from the World Cup, I got a bad eye injury playing tennis.
He wasn't on form, it was his timing. It wasn't his ability, it was his timing. And I think it was due to the eye operation.
He called me in and said, look, we've got a tour to, I think it was Australia. We're going to Australia for a couple of weeks or whatever. He said, what I'd like you to do, he said, I don't want you to come. I want you to take the wife and kids, and he said the club will pay for a holiday.
So he come to see me and he wanted a transfer. So I put it to the board. So I said, well, that's what he wants. Okay, let's get him on his bike.
He said, I'll see you when we get back, have a good time. And the Manchester Evening News, front page headlines, Morgan refuses to go on tour. You know, he was, there isn't a word, there is a word to describe him, but again, I'm sure if, I don't want my kids to hear it.
Doc's team stormed back into the first division.
All I remember is the feeling that there was at Old Trafford in those 2 years. We felt that we could play anybody at Old Trafford, give them 2 goals to start and beat them.
it was great to go into training, because you didn't know when you got in your car and were going training, you didn't know what you were going to do. It was always very entertaining, very great training.
He would come in and grab hold of the team sheet, their team sheet, screw it up and throw it on the floor. That was it. That was enough motivation for you, because he wasn't worried about them. He was more worried about what we could do to them. He'd say, don't worry about them. They've got to worry about us.
For the first time since Busby, they were serious players in the championship race and reached the Twin Towers of Wembley in the FA Cup final, where they faced Southampton.
Too many players took it for granted that they were going to win the cup that day against the underdogs.
Magalhaen to Stokes, who's onside! 1-0! One of the great Wembley upsets, and Bobby Stokes, the little man who made it possible. Meanwhile, Tommy Docherty consoles the Manchester United players who've done so much for football this season, but have missed out when it matters.
The team's youthful enthusiasm had got them this far, but when experience was needed, only Stepney and Buchan were left from the older generation. The rest had all been culled. The Doc promised the fans they would be back at Wembley next year. For once, he was as good as his word. In 1977, his lads faced a new force set to eclipse the achievements even of Busby's United, the rivals from up the road, Bob Paisley's Liverpool.
So we go there as the underdogs, and I don't remember the last time Man United have gone to Wembley as the underdogs, but it was a big help to us, because on the day everything went right for us, everything fell into place.
On by Macari. Smith slips slightly. Jimmy Green off. And has it gone in by Macari, is it? 12 months after losing here, Tommy Docherty, the manager who one or two people rather cruelly said was the most successful failure in football, has today proved them wrong.
We promised you last year we would bring the cup back, and we brought the cup back to the finest supporters in the world.
But as he shared a jolly fry-up with physio Laurie Brown on the morning of the cup final, news of his affair with Brown's wife Mary was about to hit the front as well as the back pages.
Gaffer gets everywhere today, look. He's in this one as well.
The story was breaking the following day, and I thought I'd better let Matt know just to before he picks up the paper and gets a shock. So I phoned him up. I says, "You all right, boss?" You know the first words he said to me, "Matt, man, drop dead if I'm telling a word of a lie. What has he done now?" I says, "True as God." I says, "You won't believe it, boss. He's got off with Laurie Brown's wife, Mary." Oh my God. And it was just a few days after that when he came back that Tommy Doc got the sack.
Docherty, manager of United since 1972, went to Old Trafford this morning. He wouldn't talk to reporters as he waited for the director's decision. They met at the Cheshire home of Louis Edwards, the club's chairman. Among them was Sir Matt Busby, the former manager, who flew back from Dublin specially to attend today's meeting.
I was shocked because if anybody tells you they knew what was going on, they're liars, because nobody knew.
I mean, Matt was always a great believer that the image of the club should be right. You know, that should be very, very important. There should be nothing to damage the image of the club.
He'd come back, he'd got the team back from relegation. We'd done well in the league. We were now becoming a force. There was great young players coming through. We won the cup, and next thing, you know, he'd gone.
I don't know. I think if Sir Matt had said I'm staying, I'd have stayed. I think Sir Matt, in fairness to him, said no, we cannot tolerate this.
I think the thing that got him the sack wasn't so much falling in love and leaving his wife and marrying the physio's wife. I think what it was making the physio a reserve team trainer and sending him on scouting trips and going around and giving his wife one when he was away. I think that tended to be more in line with him getting the sack.
If you go from United, you might think, oh, well, I'd like to get a team and build them as big as United, or be as good as United. But that's not possible. They're the best and the biggest. You can't build anything like that.
It is the board's intention to appoint a new manager as soon as possible, and applications are invited from managers with experience and proven ability, which should be addressed to the chairman, Mr. Louis C. Edwards, at the club address in confidence.
Why has it taken so long from the initial involvement with Mrs. Brown that we knew about?
That's the statement. That's all the club wished to say, and I don't wish to answer any further questions.
Players are funny. They may say, I'm disappointed the manager's gone, and be disappointed, but there's always another one comes along.
Dave Sexton arrived in Manchester to take on what's regarded as the top job in English club soccer.
If you're a manager and you look at the past record and the players and the managers that have been there before, you know you've got your work cut out to hang on to their coattails, let alone do anything wonderful sort of thing.
Busby and the board chose a modest man to succeed the Motormouth. After the personality, the person.
He's a nice chap, but he's got nothing to say. We say to Dave good morning, I say good morning, but don't quote me. You know, he's that type of fella.
Well, excitement, really. I'm very, very excited. Just, I was thinking about the players.
You know, it's like you open the fridge door and the lights go on, there's nothing there. Sexton's teams play dull, because Dave's dull.
In fact, give or take some new arrivals like Gordon McQueen, Sexton's team was much the one he'd inherited from the Dock. But the man was very different.
Normally, when you take over, when a manager gets a new job, the team he goes to is struggling because they're looking for things haven't gone well, obviously. But this was completely different, and Man United were on a high. So, in fact, I had to be careful that I didn't alter anything. How I became a coach, I'll never know. Like, to stand up in front of somebody and spout, because I dread that, you know. But it's something that you've got to do if you want to get on, so you force yourself to do it.
He was football mad. He knew everything about every team in the country. He knew everything about every player. He could tell you when you scored your last goal. He used to have football quizzes in the restaurant on the Friday night before a Saturday game, you know, which used to bore the backside off us, to be truthful. But that was Dave, and you know, he used to have. He was a football encyclopedia, and there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe Man United was just the wrong club for him.
When Doc held a press conference, the press's problem the next day was what to leave out. Dave was not happy dealing with the press.
But PR is exactly what Old Trafford demands. Without an assertive father figure to rally round, the fans grew restless.
You could sense the atmosphere when the Doc was there, and you could sense the atmosphere when Dave Sexton was there, and it wasn't as much.
Meanwhile, Sexton was trying gamely to interest his boys in football homework to improve their tactics.
One morning we went out, we did this corner kick routine where certain signals meant certain things. And after 45 minutes, it hadn't worked because we hadn't scored a goal in 45 minutes. So all the signals had gone wrong, all the planning had gone wrong, and nothing really was happening. Gordon McQueen turned to Dave and said, "Hey Dave, why don't we try this one where you take the corner kick, you chip it over, it hits my big stupid head, and I head it in the back of the net."
In the dressing room, the atmosphere was as raucous as ever. But a generation gap had emerged between the naughty younger boys and head prefect Martin Buchan.
A lot of people misunderstood Martin because he was very thorough in his preparation, and very meticulous, very smart. Sort of everyone stayed away from him.
I think it was one of the lads when it came. I mean, I played the guitar when we were having a night out. Drank as much as any of them.
He used to have a comb, a special comb, and he used to be sitting under water, and he'd be, and he used to go, "Oh my God, will you shut up in there?" He used to, "Oh, I'm not singing that song again." And everybody used to come out, and everybody used to tuck their shirts up and go, "Martin, I was the one that was always joking about. I used to do Norman Wisdom, and it was very popular. They'd all be sitting around the dressing rooms getting ready, and all of a sudden I might pop my head into the door and go, "Is there a game today?" Of course, like that would crack everybody up, you know.
Gordon was ideal because he joined us, and you know, he was a cocky Cockney, and A few of the lads said, hey, we've got to sort this lad out very quickly. And
I just smacked him in the back of the head and said, why don't you waken up?
You know, I thought it was one of them until I saw it was Martin. And then I did see red, and I went after him.
And he said in his wonderful normal wisdom accent, you do that again and I'll kick you in the bollocks.
The odd skirmish apart, Sexton's soldiers nearly achieved great things. In 1979, they reached the cup final against Arsenal.
Against Jordan, and McQueen! Gordon McQueen turned it in!
But with seconds to go, they were 2-1 down.
McElroy's through! McElroy is through! And McElroy has done it!
We felt when we got the equaliser, you could see it in the Arsenal players' faces that they'd gone. And if that game was getting into extra time, which everybody in the stadium did, including the players, it's getting into extra time, we will whack them in an extra 30 minutes. But of course, I never quite worked out that way.
There's a minute left on the clock. Brady for Arsenal. Right across, Sunderland! It's there! It's 3-2! Arsenal are back in front for Alan Sunderland. Well, that picture says more than any words can do at this time.
The defeat was symptomatic. Somehow, under Docherty, United were greater than the sum of their parts. Under Sexton, they were less. To strengthen his team for a fresh assault on the league, Sexton went shopping for an old friend.
The one thing you have to do playing for Man U is to perform, and perform consistently. And I wasn't, so I took a little bit of barracking from the supporters, but that's to be expected.
There's been a few players in the history of Manchester United that couldn't handle playing in front of the big crowds. You know, you've made a mistake or two, you know, if crowds start getting onto you, it's a little bit different. 50,000 moaning or groaning at your mistake rather than 5,000.
The chequebook came out again, but Sexton's purchases carried no guarantee. At Nottingham Forest, Gary Birtles couldn't stop scoring. At United, he couldn't start.
Gary Birtles actually played technically very well in that period.
Well, he fell over his own feet there.
He just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net.
Off the bar! Well, how unlucky can you get?
Despite Birtles' problems, United won the last 7 games of the 81 season. It would not be enough for the board.
And there's the final whistle. And Manchester United end their home season on a winning note, doing all they can do to retain an interest in the Championship. Dave Sexton indeed joining the lap of honour as he looks forward to a new 3-year contract as the manager of Manchester United.
But there wasn't going to be any 3-year contract. Never mind that they came second to Liverpool the previous year. The nearly man was to discover that at Old Trafford, nearly is nowhere near close enough.
I think the thing we have to look forward to is that Manchester United is a business, and a lot of the supporters weren't happy this season, and that was reflected in the hundreds of letters we received.
That was the 3rd time I got the sack, because I got the sack at Chelsea. Oh no, it wasn't the 3rd, because I went to Coventry and I got the sack there as well. So it was the 2nd time I got the sack. So, and it's like, it's humiliating, you know, to get the sack publicly. So it's not very pleasant. But, you know, happened to a lot better people than me.
The new club chairman, Martin Edwards, had the summer to find a potential league winner. He looked everywhere, including Southampton and Laurie McMenemy.
I think we've got one in mind.
Is that Laurie McMenemy?
I wouldn't answer that.
There's lots of other names getting bandied around. We weren't quite sure who we were going to get.
Are you interested in Brian Clough?
No, we're not.
A journalist rang me from Manchester. Said there was Manchester United would be very interested in interviewing me. Would I be interested in the job? I said, of course I would.
We're very pleased after such a long time to be able to say that he's been appointed the new manager of Manchester United.
Ron Atkinson had created in West Bromwich Albion a fast, fluent and fashionable team. Almost as important after Sexton, he gave good soundbite.
Life's too short, really. You know, Malcolm Allison has said many great things in his life, but I think the greatest thing he said is it ain't a rehearsal.
The new boss was the antithesis of the old.
Get at it, don't take his space, get at it.
Flash, brash and tandoori tanned.
Ron always used to look a healthy colour and have a suntan all the year round because he had a sunbed in his office at the Cliff. And this was the days when sunbed just first came into being.
It was given to us, and it was supposed to have gone into the medical room. That's what happened. And I think the physio, Jimmy McGregor at the time, said, like Gaffney said, they're all coming in and using this, like, you know, and whatever. I said, well, I tell you what, dump it in my office and we'll have it as a bit of a laugh in there, like, you know.
It's a long way to go to Wembley, but we'll get there, we know.
Ron was the type of guy that would come in, and from the minute he come in, you could hear him until the minute he left. And that was the sort of fella he was.
I think everyone thought most of the time he'd be whining and dining in all the nightclubs in Manchester and probably thinking very little about the team and all that. But Ron was another one who knew his football from A to Z, and you couldn't catch him out with any football questions. He knew all the answers, he knew all the teams, a bit like Dave Sexton, very thorough.
Come on, then, let's see, you're a winger. Come on, hit. When I got there, I think the better players at the club, or the majority of them, were seeing their better days. You know, it's pretty obvious that we would have to do some, if you like, I said we had to do some major surgery pretty quickly.
Manager Ron Atkinson and Chairman Martin Edwards joined Ryan Robson on the pitch as he signed the 6-year contract that makes him the most expensive footballer in Britain. The package deal that brought Robson to Old Trafford included his teammate Remy Moses and cost the club £2.5 million. It makes United the biggest spenders in football history.
I said, this isn't a gamble, you know. I said, you're not even gambling, paying whatever we paid, $1.5 million or whatever.
This fella's not even, you know, it's not even a gamble, you know, buying a player like him, because he's pure gold.
It was a big gamble for Ron. I mean, I think few in the boardroom at Man United would have said Brian who when he was talking about paying £1.5 million for me, because it was a hell of a lot of money at that time.
It was a master signing by Ron Atkinson, and it was very easy to see very early on that there was definitely a lad there with unbelievable strength and power.
At the club, just little incidental things was always done for you. Bathrobes, flip-flops, all things like this. It was just little bits and pieces, but they made you feel as if you know, it was very professional at the club.
Atkinson's throw of the dice was immediately successful. He gambled and won again with young Norman Whiteside, who became the youngest ever scorer in a cup final. In 1983, Atkinson popped the FA Cup into the trophy cabinet. But in the league, Liverpool still dominated, and that rankled.
It was like Vietnam sometimes, the Liverpool-Man United game. Sometimes it was very, very unpleasant, to be fair. It wasn't hostile, it was hatred.
Atkinson badly needed new talent to have any chance of bloodying the Scousers' noses. In 1984, he bought Danish international Jesper Olsen, and from Aberdeen, Gordon Strachan. The new arrivals found Atkinson an indulgent father.
Usually managers are always saying, you know, get to your bed early and that, no drinking the night before a game. He would allow a player to have 1 or 2 pints before he went to bed because he thought it would help him sleep better.
We used to go out for a few drinks when it was appropriate. I mean, you wouldn't say it's out on a Thursday or Friday night, like getting drunk.
I mean, even the night before the cup final, he'd say, do you want a pint before you go to your bed or whatever, which was strange for managers to do.
At Pat Creran's pub, Ron's boys built up a hard-drinking image which, once established, was hard to shake off.
The unfortunate thing about football, with football being such a high-profile game, if a player goes out for a drink, it might only have 1 or 2 pints, but by the time the story is elongated, he's finished up out his brains and getting carried out of here and thrown out of there and all that sort of stuff.
I was with the kind of the C squad, the socialisers. There was the A squad, which was you had to be able to drink 10 pints of beer a night, which I was nowhere near.
Once people have, 4 or 5 pints, the tongue loosens and everybody tells a few home truths, and sometimes things can be sorted out there, and you get to know each other as lads as well then.
The A squad were legendary in the fact that they were led by the captain, and Captain Marvel, Brian Robson.
You get to know the strong personalities and the ones who maybe is not so strong.
I went out one night with them. I think I ended up in Brian's Jaguar, travelling to Bury. Then, I don't know how I got home from Bury, but my wife thought, christened me the new George Best when I got home that night.
It just, cheeses me off a little bit when people say, oh, they drank too much, they drank too much. We were always first on the team sheet, and we had a little bit of success as well, so we didn't do too bad.
Right side shoots, it's there!
After winning the Cup again in '85, United were on target to win the league and won the first 10 games of the next season. The gaffer focused all his energy on his first team, the Magic Circle.
I think it worked well for the lads who were actually playing in the team all the time.
When I first got in the team, he said, you're in the Magic Circle, son, which meaning I'm part of the first team, which was, brilliant.
What happened there, though, was that the fringe players would feel a bit out of it.
One who often felt on the edge of the Magic Circle was Mark Hughes, signed as a schoolboy by Dave Sexton.
I'm not too happy with his attitude. He looked a bit dour, a bit deep, a bit not terribly enthusiastic.
Well, Mr. Atkinson, he got very close to the senior players like Brian Robson and he had Gordon Strack and forceful characters that he liked to get close to, and I think he had difficulties integrating me into that circle,
Whilst Atkinson continued to have his doubts, Hughes's goals took United to the top of the table in the autumn of 1985. But Sparky's talent had been spotted by Terry Venables, manager of Barcelona, who made an approach to buy him. Incredibly, with United within an ace of the only prize that mattered, Atkinson accepted the offer for his goal machine.
We didn't want him to go, but we really couldn't stop him.
So it was him who wanted to go?
Oh, yeah.
¿Qué hay en Barcelona?
¿Qué hay en Barcelona?
I think maybe if the club had put me on par with maybe some of the senior players, the type of money that they were earning, I wouldn't have gone anywhere, but they didn't, and I went.
Hughes stayed at United until the end of the season, but for Barca's own political reasons, the deal had to be kept secret.
I mean, it's hard to sit in the dressing room and not tell someone you're getting £1 million a year or something, that's not the figure, I'm just making it up, but, it's hard to say you're not going, although he was sworn to secrecy.
I kept having to deny the fact that I was actually going, and that was difficult to do because I was denied to my friends, their family, and the fans who deserved to know, really, and that was very difficult.
Hughes's form was fatally affected, and with it, United's league chances. They finished 4th in a race they'd promised to cruise. Atkinson's luck was running out. His third big gamble was his last. He used the Hughes windfall to buy new players, but replacements like Nottingham Forest's Peter Davenport couldn't fill the gap left by the marauding Welshman.
But I remember coming here to Old Trafford and getting booed on my home debut, which I wasn't too pleased with. Some people were resentful that I'd taken Mark Hughes' place, or I was eventually going to take Mark Hughes' place, and they didn't want that to happen.
This season has been a disaster. A string of defeats kept United at the foot of the table for weeks. During recent games, Ron Atkinson has been showing the strain as impatience on the terraces has grown.
As the goals dried up, the pressure to win some silver began to tell on Atkinson's boys, even on the training pitch.
It seems to me that when you're at a club like Manchester United, if Brian Robson farted in training or something like that, I mean, it would hit the back page headlines, you know. Whereas like all the other big clubs in the country, you never seem to hear that type of thing.
I was standing right by Jesper as he played the sort of long ball, and Remy came in and caught him late.
There was a kerfuffle, and Remy was quite useful, shall we say.
And then Remy came over and hit him with a bit of a right hook.
They had an altercation which Remy won hands down, he went hands up, easy.
Of course, that was immediately in the papers, and that was one of the things that the press started a bit of a campaign that perhaps Big Ron wasn't the man to manage Manchester United.
Well, Manchester United captain Brian Robson is holding his right shoulder.
The boss had other problems too. Injuries picked up on foreign fields.
I think 7 players went out to the Mexico World Cup. And when we got back, 5 of them needed operations.
Robson has already missed half the season with injury and now off right at the start of the match. And the faces of the United management there, Mick Brown and Ron Atkinson, show the anguish.
I probably should have left him that summer. We just got beaten a cup replay at Southampton. Martin Edwards called me in 2 days later and said, you know, we made a decision that we're going to, you know, we're just finishing your contract.
He's the only man I've ever known who's got the sack and had a party at the same time.
Started off as a quiet drink in my office with a few friends, went on to something else, all of a sudden people started appearing from nowhere, and before you knew it, we were in full swing.
When did you think the things started to go wrong, Ron? That's always hard to say, isn't it?
The changed world of United was all too apparent. The camera shutters and the microphones strained at the first appearance of the new boss.
The tradition and the history of the club and the romance of it has got to be a tremendous attraction, and in my stage in life at Aberdeen I needed that type of challenge. I needed to go to the biggest and the best.
I think he's a winner. I think he's proved he can be successful, albeit north of the border. When you think he's won 10 trophies in 8 years, he has won the Cup Winners' Cup, his record speaks for itself.
The day I came here, the job was to win the league. Make no mistake about it.
When he came to Old Trafford, he didn't know how big the place was. He was in awe of the place. I mean, it was massive. And he'd come up and train and say to me and Robbo, whatever he'd say, big place this and that, big club this.
When I first came down, there this thing about press coming round every day. So I stopped that. I said, no way that I'm going to give you something every day, restricting my job by giving you my time every day. The team at the time were second bottom in the league. I think it was quite an oldish team, and times ran out for some of the players. And I felt then there was a bit of work to be done.
The first thing Gordon said when he knew that you know, Alec Ferguson was on his way down was he came in and shook hands with the lad and said, bye-bye, I'm on my way out. Finn Gordon.
In fact, it was Davenport whose days were numbered. Strachan managed to hold on for another 2 seasons. But former Gillingham and Norwich player Steve Bruce was snapped up by Ferguson.
I mean, when I first arrived, which was in '87, the big thing was Manchester United hadn't won the league for 20 odd years. Now, a club of this stature and this status, that was the holy grail, if you like.
We couldn't accept Liverpool dominating anymore, or Arsenal were now emerging. We had to do something about it.
He huffed and he puffed, but United still only managed second place in the league in 1988. The champions were, who else? Liverpool.
That night I decided I was going to change it.
And when I got back, first thing he said, Norman, the club have given me, 20 million quid to spend, and you're not part of my future plans type of thing. And I found this hard to take because, I've been there from such an early age and crying and didn't know what to do with myself. Because it was a big wrench. I knew it was going to come, but just wasn't sort of ready for it. You're never ready for talks like that.
Out came the chequebook, and in came Pallister and Ince. Plus, the prodigal son returning from abroad, Mark Hughes.
when I left the club, I always said, well, I'd love to go back there when my time abroad was up. But in reality, I never thought that would happen.
Alex Ferguson was a new, tougher parent, impatient with his boys if their minds wandered from the task ahead of them.
Well, there was many occasions when he'd blow his top, but only because of the will to win that he had.
Peter Barnes came off about 15 minutes to go, and when Fergie came in, he had a screaming match.
The person that was getting the telling off would get what we call the hairdryer, where he would stand nose to nose with you and just shout and bawl and end up with your hair behind your head, you know.
Peter had disappeared and he come off 15 minutes earlier than everybody else. And Fergie was looking for him and he went looking for him, he looked in the bath and what have you, he couldn't find him in there in the toilet, so Peter seemed to have disappeared.
After 5 minutes he calmed down and tried and sort out what he was trying to say.
The door opened, it was Peter Barnes who was freezing. He'd been lying in the bath for the last half hour and when Fergie came in he ducked under the water so he couldn't get him.
I've got a temper if I need it. Nothing wrong with losing your temper. That's the right reasons.
The new mix of players needed time to gel, but time is the one luxury the media never give to United managers. And in December '89, familiar storm clouds were gathering.
You've got to hold your hands up to Martin Edwards, who stuck by Alex after he'd been at the club for about 2.5 years, and there was a few people starting to rumble in the background, and Martin Edwards stuck by him.
The directors never ever mentioned the possibility that there would be a change with Alex Ferguson, because we knew he was right.
Lee Martin from left back, an inspired run on the far side. A chance.
The youthful promise that unexpectedly brought him his first trophy, the FA Cup in 1990, soon began to flower. The new sons of Old Trafford, Fergie's fledglings.
It's the young new blood at Old Trafford, which has put Manchester United back into the FA Cup.
I've been with City as a kid, at the centre of excellence, and they sort of assumed that I'd signed for him, but no one actually asked me to sign for him. So I went to Man United for a week and loved it there.
By the end of this season, Ferguson will be United's longest-serving manager since Busby. Keeping young men like Ryan Giggs training and away from the predators is just part of his working day.
Ferguson remembered with horror what had happened to George Best. He didn't want it to happen again.
I don't want them going to open shops here, there and everywhere, or being out every day of the week doing commercial things or charity things. All these things have to be controlled. Energy is so vital with footballers because we're playing cup finals every week out there.
Fergie's lads began to accumulate trophies. The FA Cup, the European Cup Winners' Cup, the Rumbelows Cup. But the one that proved you really were better than your peers still eluded him, the league.
Mark Walters forced the ball home to leave United's fans wondering why Alex Ferguson and his team had become the latest squad to fail to satisfy a 25-year-old craving at Old Trafford.
Well, I think that was the lowest point in my career, definitely. You know, where we hadn't won it or we hadn't achieved anything.
In 1992, Leeds, chivied by Gordon Strachan, stole the league after United had led on the final bend.
And everywhere I went, people were, saying about the league and, when are you going to win it? Are we going to win it? And then you started to think, how much it meant to him.
The media blamed Fergie for letting his own impatient jitters get to his team.
I think he felt we were very nervous. I remember before the Liverpool game, he brought in a comedian from somewhere for the pre-match meal. I think it must have been very hard for the comedian because we weren't really in the mood, but he did his best.
Much of Leeds' success that year was thanks to an outrageous Gallic import.
3-2 to Leeds United, and the Frenchman scores his second.
So Ferguson bought him, an unrepeatable bargain at £1.2 million.
Il est une star, Eric Cantona. Il est un ange, il est un mélange insolite rare.
I don't think anyone realised how good a player he was until he came to Manchester United. Until you've seen him first hand in training every week, then you realise that he was something special.
King Eric slipped on the crown left in the changing room by Denis Law and formed an unstoppable front line with Giggs and Hughes. A threesome to trip off the tongue with the ease of Law, Best and Charlton. In 1993, Ferguson's link-side single-mindedness paid off.
Manchester United have won the FA Premier League title, their first league championship for 26 years.
And that's the moment Old Trafford has been waiting for since 1967. Sheer delirious delight.
At last, the ghost of the Busby inheritance was laid to rest.
It didn't really hit us until all the lads got together and they're congratulating each other, and it was just a sense of relief and just you can't explain it really. It's like when you score a goal, you just can't explain.
It's a proud moment for everybody concerned, but I think it was all just a relief to us all. The party we had and was the best party I think I've ever been involved in, purely because I think the people close to you as well realised the tension and the relief that it was all over, and eventually you'd won the league.
After a generation, the successor had been found, the new godfather of Old Trafford.
The sweetest moment for me is the last minute of a victory. After that, it drains away from me quickly. The memory's gone in half an hour. It's gone for me. It's like a drug reel. You need to then reenact it all over again to get that buzz again, that last minute feeling. That's the best moment. You're shouting out the referee, blow that bloody whistle.
Still to come on Best Night, we're off down the local, chatting over George Best's Fantasy 11. Followed swiftly by Parkinson and Best in a rematch of their legendary 70s interviews. Before the final whistle, the result of the 10 of the Best competition, and then a chance to see George in awesome form in the 1966 European Cup quarter-final against the mighty Benfica.
What a player this boy is! He's got another! What a player!
So here's how they line up for the second half of Best Night.
The last challenge before Euro 96. England versus China in a friendly, their first game in a two-stage tour of the Far East. For the first time ever, England played China before going on to challenge Hong Kong. Highlights on Match of the Day, Thursday at 6:45 on BBC One.
This is BBC Two, simply the best.
And now George Best's fantasy team. He'd probably pull on the number 7 shirt in most people's best team, but who would he choose to be in his? We asked the cream of football cognoscenti to debate his choice. They all refused, so we got a bunch of loudmouths led by Johnny Vaughan to spout off down the pub instead.
No, I promise you he'll be here. He did say he'd be here. I'm telling you, George Best will be here.
Oh, he won't. You're having a laugh.
It's his local pub. He's got to be here, isn't he?
Yeah, but how many local pubs has he got?
Well, he's got a local pub with one drink anyway. Speaking of which,
He'll be here.
It's a local pub.
George is coming.
Okay, what is the dealer and what's he done? It's his best 11, isn't it?
George has picked his best 11, all British, no continentals, last 30 or 40 years.
Naturally, no continentals.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be West Ham, would it?
He may have picked the side lads, but he hasn't turned up yet.
Well, we need to kick off without him, won't we?
Okay, it's okay, because I have the team. It's not such a disaster. We've got a nice drinky there for him. Let's just crack straight in with it.
Who's in goal then?
Pat Jennings, Big Pat. He's between
Big
the
Pat
sticks.
Jennings, yeah. But Jennings did invent the arcing tip over as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Pure Pat Jennings. He was a superb shot stopper.
On the run is Craig. Oh, great save, Jennings.
He did. He just curled round the bar, and you could never do that if you just laid your jackets down on the ground because there was no bar there.
Also, he never wore gloves either, so that's proper goalkeeping for you.
McDonald, Craig! Oh! Craig can't believe it!
On a football thing, in choosing it, he's only really got 4 people to choose from, I reckon. Shilton, Shilts, Clements, Pat Jennings or Neville Southall. Anything outside of that? Nobody else is going to get.
Do you think he's been strangely patriotic to Northern Ireland?
Not even Gordon Banks.
Oh, and Gordon Banks.
Barney Spares for the game. Have you ever seen that advert that he did? He did an advert. I swear I saw this at the pictures once, where he's done up. You're not going to.
The oil
He's
one.
done up as an oil filter.
Yeah, you are. It's shocking.
An oil filter is like a goalkeeper. The more it saves, the better it is.
Clumps of Did he let any oily rags in though? No, he didn't.
A Unipart filter.
Okay, so do we think we'd stick with Pat Jennings there?
I would stick with Pat Jennings, but I seem to be the only one, so.
Well, no, I'll stick with him as well, Kev. Okay, listen, we're going to move now to the back 4 we've got here. It's odd formation. We've got Stuart Pearce, Mike England, Bobby Moore, and George Cohen.
George the Rabbi.
The Rabbi Cohen,
The
of
Rabbi
course.
Cohen, yeah.
Here's Charlton. Oh, Charlton, a beautiful ball to Best, but look at the speed of Cohen. Great fullback is George Cohen.
Don't know much about George Cohen, except that Alf Ramsey rated him as the best fullback.
Did he play for Fulham?
Played for
a long
yeah.
time. In fact, well...
In fact, he only played for Fulham, didn't he, I think?
That was in his whole career, the whole time he played.
400 games, 37 caps.
Yeah, it's difficult though, isn't it? Because you see the footage of the '66 World Cup and you see all the goals, you don't tend to notice what the right backs do.
I think as well, if you're going to pick George Cohen, there's an argument that you pick Ray Wilson as well, because that was the pairing that really won things for England and did so well for them. So if you are going to think about ditching Pearce out of the side, I think you've got to think about putting Ray Wilson. But then you're starting
bookending, matching bookends, aren't they?
And then to think of other right backs.
But Bobby Moore, that's not controversial, is it?
Oh no, Mooro.
Surely they should have called him the vicar if they were calling him the rabbi.
You'll never see a better tackle than this.
It's awesome, isn't it?
The perfect timing.
Thinks quickly, tackles well, no argument on that.
Every schoolboy's dream. Isn't he, though? He's every schoolboy's pin-up. That's why he's the one
You
for
have
me.
to have someone in the back 4 who does the pointing.
Bobby Moore was the Michael Caine of football, though, wasn't he? He was the coolest footballer of the '60s.
Tina's not the best dart player in the world, but she enjoys the game while she's waiting for me. After a match, we often meet our wife for a
Look at this synchro work here. 2 of them. Separated at birth. Look, there. Woof. Oh, superb.
And he's going to hit the bar.
Look, great tackle, isn't it?
Look, but the way thing he's gone to his wife. There you go, love. That's how you throw an 8.
It's not true. Like Mr. and Mrs. Bobby Moore, looking at the local.
And we've got Mike England. Were you surprised at that?
A bit. I mean, he's a tough, uncompromising player, good in the air, strong. But you wouldn't have thought he was George Best's sort of player, to be honest with you.
So why is George chosen him? Is he a drinker? Could it be that?
In moves England, he's got hold of it,
If it was Dave Mackay, for example, you'd imagine Best he would go for rather than Mike England. I mean, Mike England's surely only there for his commentator value. His name is England, yet he plays for Wales.
Yeah.
Ho, ho, ho.
He's also got Stuart Pearce there.
Controversial, right?
I think that's a bit controversial. I mean,
except you then ask yourself a question as to who else you put in. Actually, think Kenny Sampson.
Kenny Sampson was superb. Terry Cooper.
Ron
Terry
Harris.
Cooper, you can argue. Not Kenny Sansom.
But Pearce, I'm surprised because Pearce wouldn't be George's best sort of player, I'd imagine.
But it's funny you say that because George actually likes robust players. He liked the idea that the game was about people getting stuck in and kicking each other, and he bemoans the fact there isn't tackling.
He was a real, even when he wasn't captain, he was a real...
Well, he could really take players. They
G
did
up
that
the young
famous
lads.
take out on Sinclair, just completely took him out.
Stuart Pearce doing on Trevor Sinclair what he's been known to do for a long time. He put in a strong challenge.
He's a good enough player. He's hard in the tackle.
Hard.
But beyond that, what more is there to his game?
Didn't Pearce used to have the Stranglers always on the Forest team coach?
He wouldn't allow the other players to listen to anything other than the Stranglers or Punk on the team coach. So Luther Vandross was way out of the window. So those long coachings, he would literally he'd fight the tapes off anybody's hand. So
you think you can also, but Stuart, when I think of Stuart, I've got to say, I think missed penalty.
You'd think big thighs, missed penalty.
I do.
Yeah.
Can he do it for England? He can't!
What was it that Stuart Pearce, when there's in the production of An Evening of Gary Lineker, when you rewrite history, and he scores, and didn't he go and see it?
He went to see it in Nottingham, and obviously it's like when Gary Lineker was there, everybody was looking to see what he was thinking, and every time there's a mention of him, people were leaning over there. You could see the whole audience, the heads.
You were doing it too, though.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but I didn't see it when Pearce was there. But apparently, when it comes to the bit where Pearce misses his penalty in real life, in the play he scores, and everyone's looking at Pearce saying, "Oh, he's going to be really upset now. We're going to go through this penalty." And what he did was this: when it went in, he was like, "Pearce has scored." He went. In the middle of the theatre.
Okay, let's go to the middle of the park. Brian Robson, Colin Bell. He's gone for that. Their bestest choice.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a midfield that you look and think, who's not there if there's anything else? No Glenn Hoddle, no Liam Brady. Again, he's picking Brian Robson, who's a box-to-box player, full of energy, fit, leads the team well. But
fit's not quite fit. If not injured.
No, but that's the point. As Kevin says, and I think rightly so, injured.
Haitley, good header.
Yeah, all his shoulders gone. All his shoulders gone.
But you see, this is my enduring image of Brian Robson. Exactly that.
Pops right out.
England with a string of draws behind them, and Robson lying down.
As Brian Clough said, the only reason he got injured because he was the only one brave enough to get in there in the first place.
Wilkins is in there, and Robson! What a goal!
He could volley very well. He could volley with the best of them.
It's just as well that he stopped his career when he did, because if you actually follow his injuries, the next injury he was due for was actually spontaneous human combustion.
Oh, yeah, you're right, it was the only one left.
That was the only one. And look at Robson there, he goes, boom!
He did score a few marvellous goals for England, though, and I don't know if Bestie's been a bit Man United-centric about this, because obviously he's Mr. Man United, he's the player that's so dear to them up at Old Trafford. Do you think that would have shaped Bestie's selection?
I suppose so. I mean, for so long he did personify Man United, and I think you're right, he's an 80s player. I think what George has tried to do is spread it a little bit. It would have been easy for him to pick all players from his own era, but he'll have seen Robson play, and he was a tremendous influence on Manchester United, and an influence on a team as well.
We lifted the FA Cup 3 times as well, which is that's something.
He was a footballing genius because he managed to play football and referee the game at the same time, which is a very difficult thing to do.
And what about Colin Bell? What do we think about that for a selection?
Good passer of the ball.
But he's made George Best's all-time team. Why?
Guilt.
Yeah,
guilt.
We think this is a debt-laden team. There are debts being paid off here. And
does Colin like a drink as well?
There does seem to be a theme developing along that.
Fulham, alcohol and injuries.
Bell! Keegan, series of 1-2s, Bell. 3-0!
But one of Bell's strengths was that he was, like Martin Peters, way ahead of his time. He was the sort of player that could actually have survived in the modern game, where a lot of those players from the 60s and George Best's era probably couldn't have done.
Technically, it wasn't that much good being 10 years ahead of your time, though, was it, really? Because unless the rest of the players were anywhere near you.
You're arriving in the box in 1975.
Player of the future. Wearing his anti-gravity boots.
OK, let's go up front, and I'll tell you the four. Let's discuss them as a foursome. We've got Bobby Charlton.
Controversial.
Dennis Law. Not that controversial. Robbie Fowler.
That is controversial, yeah.
What? Yeah. And Jimmy Greaves. That's not that controversial.
Oh, he
drank a lot, so I can see. Bestie's obviously seen something in Robbie Fowler, hasn't he, there?
You can see things in young players. You don't need to have been around for years and years to see a player who's a real star, and I think he's right about Robbie Fowler.
Well, he's like Jimmy Greaves, great from the off.
It's Robbie Fowler. It's him again. Fowler's there. He scored.
It's odd as well that he hasn't gone for Ryan Giggs there. I mean, he hasn't got anybody. He hasn't got any wingers there at all.
You see Ryan. He's the man that's been sort of put up as the new best. I think this is quite a deliberate thing, isn't it? It's almost George saying he's not.
Of all the players in this team, Robbie Fowler's the only one who hasn't proved it at international level. I'm surprised that George Best is obviously convinced that he will do it. And how can he justify not having Lineker in there?
Or Ian Rush even.
Or Ian Rush, if you know what I mean.
I mean, the thing that strikes me
I think Robbie Fowler's got more than Lineker.
He's got potential, but he still hasn't. To me, he hasn't proven it at the top level.
He scored some fantastic goals. So young as well. He shows experience way over his years as well. It's the fact that he is so crafty.
It's Robbie Fowler. It's 3.
But obviously Bestie's seen something, hasn't he?
Bestie, obviously Bestie. He hasn't seen this pub for a while, but he obviously
if you pour it, he will come.
I like having Greaves in that lineup just simply because of that. I read an article he did, an interview, and it was just like a questionnaire, and it said who was the biggest influence on your game. And he actually, this is true, this was in print, he actually put Vladimir Smirnov. And I like the fact that player can look back on his life. It was,
Do you think Greaves was a cheeky right-wing scamp even then? What a turn this is.
Greaves changing direction so well.
See, that's dribbling, isn't it? That's proper old-fashioned dribbling.
Fabulous goal.
He took his time about goals.
Oh, he scored.
Not frightened of just dribbling it into the back of the net.
There's that game with the dog on the pitch in Chile against Brazil. And the dog comes on the pitch and Greaves sort of picks it up.
He's almost entered the mind of the dog.
The dog comes up and Greaves picks it up. And actually what you don't see is that the dog actually peed on Greaves' shirt.
You can see Jimmy Greaves going like that with his hands, like somebody spilled orange juice on his hands. Like, oh my God! Jimmy Greaves.
Because it's pissed.
Which Garrincha, who was playing for Brazil, thought this was so funny that after the game he went into the stadium and tried to find this dog, found the dog, adopted it, took it home to Brazil and called it Jimmy Greaves, and looked after it forevermore.
Well, they say that every dog has to have his day, and here's one who's going to prove it. Past Garrincha, past Flowers. And it's Jimmy Greaves, the England inside forward, who really knows how to deal with the situation.
Don't take the bracelet off the dog.
But look, you have to have Dennis Law, as my dad says, he scores proper goals. Dennis Law scores proper footballers' goals.
He certainly scored one very proper goal against Manchester United. This really is Dennis Law's finest hour.
Look at that, closing down midfield like they used to
Look at that.
these days. Look
at that. But he takes them all on. And
superb defence all round.
He does everything he can not to score.
Oh, come on, that was clinical.
He doesn't want to score there.
No, he really didn't want to score there. He tried to almost disassociate himself from the ball. It's like, oh, was there a ball just behind me there?
And no elation there at all from Dennis Law.
If you're picking the top 11 international team, then you'd have to go for people like Lineker and Keegan who do
but they're
who have proved it at that level.
What I see is people who can nick goals. I mean, you've got Dennis Law, Robbie Fowler, Jimmy Greaves, 3 great people to nick a goal, but I don't see a kind of provider there.
You're going to have to make Charlton drop into midfield.
Yeah, you have to play midfield,
yeah.
With his hair.
With his
Or indeed without his hair. Charlton going for a 1-2 and getting it. Oh, what a goal!
During that, we presume he's just mopping up, isn't he? He's just dabbing with a tissue.
We've already mentioned a lot of footballers listen to Luther Vandross, and Stuart Pearce used to listen to Sham 69. Bobby Charlton, the only player that would listen to the shipping forecast before going to any game, depending whether he used the heavy grade hair products.
OK, well, there we have it. That's George's big, fantastic 11 players there. How do you think this team would play together?
I don't think this team would work. It's unbalanced. You've got a very strong back four and you've got 4 natural goal scorers, but you've got no one to give them the ball.
But you'd have a hell of a lot of fun in the bar afterwards.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I can see it now. Loads of people really drunk and Sham 69 on the jukebox.
All stranglers. Well, there you have it then. I was just saying George couldn't turn up, isn't it, really?
Who's going to have his drink?
I don't think any of us should have. I think we should leave it there, really.
Yeah. The ice has melted. OK, so we should drink with our now empty glasses, sadly.
Holding an empty glass for George, how appropriate.
Have some friends.
George.
Oh, they say Jennings! But look at the speed of Cohen.
Good tackle by Moore.
In moves England, he's got hold of it, he's scored!
Pearce.
Oh, it's in! And Robson! What a goal!
Bell. 3-0. Fowler's there. He scored.
Charlton going for a 1-2. Oh, what a goal!
Green.
What a great goal! Dennis Law, and he's scored! Brilliant! Absolutely brilliant! He deserved that. That running was absolutely perfect. He got that ball.
This is BBC Two. We're running a little later than planned because of our earlier coverage of the international golf. It's Best night.
George Best has been interviewed many times over the years, but the two interviews he did with Michael Parkinson in the early 70s have become legendary. Now, 21 years later, George is in the hot seat again as Parkinson meets Best.
I have known George Best for more than 30 years. I have seen him in all his glory and in his times of great despair. He is a fascinating and remarkable man. In a moment, an interview I did with George Best on the occasion of his 50th birthday. But first, a look back to a couple of interviews from a long time ago. In 1973, George Best announced he was retiring from football.
Is it possible, I don't believe it is, you see, for you to live without football?
Well, so far, I don't know how long it is since I've played. It's 3 or 4 months, I think, and I haven't missed it.
You haven't?
Not in the slightest, no.
Let's go back then to the point where you took this decision to end your career. What really was the reason?
I wasn't enjoying playing as much as I had done. I wasn't as fit as I should have been because of my own fault. It was my own fault.
Why was that? You were drinking?
General things, yeah. Nightlife and drinking, I suppose.
Yes.
Too many late nights.
In 1975, older but not much wiser, he was off to America, and he told me why.
What is it that's unattractive about the game itself, though, in this country? I mean, what is it that makes you reluctant to go back and be what you are, and always will be, a First Division footballer?
I think it's a mixture, as I've said in the past. I think they do it the wrong way here. I think they build their superstars, or so-called superstars, up, and they get them on a pedestal. And the first thing they want to do when they get them there is knock them off again. And I don't think they do it in America. I think they do it exactly the opposite. If they get someone who's good at their job and brings the crowds in, no matter what he does outside of the game or how he performs off the field, they go out of their way to keep him at the top because they love their superstars.
Mm. So it's more or less, it's the price of being a superstar in this country that you object to more than anything else, that you find...
It's hard work, you know, being a face or a name in England.
Yes.
I mean, I've had great years here, and I just think the time might be nice to move on.
George, was there ever a time when you doubted if you'd reached the age of 50?
Definitely not. Well, it started off, they said it was 30 if I was lucky, because sort of late 20s I was going through a bit of a bad time, as you know, and it was touch and go. It was a bit dodgy. Then it was 40, and between 30 and 40 it was even more dodgy, and so 50 is a bit of a landmark in more ways than one.
But I mean, did you have an ambition to play for Manchester United, to be a world famous footballer? Was that what you wanted to be?
Well, I talk about small and skinny. I mean, you've known me since I was... When you first met, I was fat, compared to what I was like at school. And there were scouts came to watch me play. I didn't know until recently, actually. I knew a couple of Irish League scouts had come to watch me play. But I didn't find out until recently that Leeds United sent someone to watch me when I was 15. And my dad told me the guy stayed for 20 minutes and left. And so I could have been a Leeds United player. And then, of course, the true story is when the Manchester United scout, someone had recommended me to him, and he came, and the story's legend now. He sent off Sir Matt the telegram and said, "I think I found a genius."
I'd like to explore a little bit this relationship you had with Sir Matt, because it was a very loving relationship, wasn't it?
I mean, if there's one thing that through life, if whatever else happens, the fact that I met Sir Matt would make it all worthwhile. I mean, you're talking about one of the loveliest. You've known him for a long time as well, and when he went, I mean, there was a lot of people devastated, me included. And I mean, he was a special man. He really was, and you can't really speak too highly of him because it's impossible.
See, one of the popular theories about your career is that Matt was too soft with you, and that you had a harder manager, say a young Clough or some a disciplinarian, that things might have been very different for George Best. Do you think they might have been?
No, I don't think so. I think Sir Matt himself has always said that the good times far outweighed the bad. He said, and he actually said to me once, he believed that if it hadn't been for me, he wouldn't have won as much as he did in that period that I was there. And looking at it as well, I mean, I was Manchester United's leading goal scorer for 6 seasons. And one of those seasons with the First Division's top goal scorer. We won the league twice, European Cup. It wasn't a bad spell. So I think maybe once in a while that's why people think it was a little bit soft for me. But he was hard when he had to be, and if he stepped out of line, he let you know it.
Now, when you talk about that period with you and Busby and the rest of the team at Man United, that early 60s, it was a very special period. Anybody who was there will never forget it. And it was, as you said, it was a conjunction of various things. It was music, the Beatles, it was the entire northern scene happening, it was King's Road, fashion and all that. Were you aware of being in the right place at the right time?
Not then. I just thought this was the way it was, and it was always going to be. I was a young man, loving life. I mean, and living it to the full. I was earning lots of money. I was doing something I loved, getting paid for. I was travelling around the world, all paid for, staying in the best hotels, flying first class. I mean, it was the weekend, as soon as the games finished, coming down to London. Boss let me have an extra day off once in a while, so I could stroll the King's Road looking for a few birds. It was, and I thought that's the way it was. That's the way. I didn't appreciate it until later on. I mean, that really was a special period.
I mean, but you became, I mean, very, very quickly, you were dubbed the fifth Beatle by the newspapers, and for once they were right. I mean, you had that kind of fame. And today it's very easy to forget that you were the first footballer this ever happened to. I mean, today there's all kind of protection put around players. You had none, did you, really? You were by yourself.
That was a problem, really, because it hadn't happened before. I mean, I was receiving something like 10,000 letters a week. I had sort of 3 full-time secretaries answering my mail. And again, I thought this happens to everybody. It was just amazing. And the reason, I suppose, I wasn't protected because they didn't know how to protect it, because they'd never seen it before. They had no one sort of to look at and say, well, this has happened to so-and-so, because it hadn't happened to anybody. And I was doing what I considered normal things. I was growing my hair long. I was riding around in nice cars and spending lots of money and enjoying myself. And the social side wasn't too difficult. There were always plenty of girls. I mean, I was appearing more in pop magazines than I was in football magazines.
Was it difficult to retain your focus as a footballer while all this was happening to you?
In the early days, that was the least of my problems, because the only thing I wanted, I couldn't wait for the next game. I used to go into a bit of a depression after the final whistle went. It was either because if I hadn't played too well, I wanted it to carry on so I could play better. And if I was having one of those games where everything was going right, again, I didn't want it to end because it was, I wanted it to carry on forever. So once the final whistle went, the first thing I thought about was the following game, whether it was on the Monday night or the Wednesday night or the following Saturday.
What's interesting is that when people talk about you now, they talk about your great natural gifts, but they overlook one fact. You were a very good trainer, weren't you? And you used to work hard at what you perceived to be your weaknesses. Yeah,
I don't think I ever had idols, but I had players I admired. I remember when I was 15, watching the great Real Madrid side. They came to play United at Old Trafford, and I was a kid up at the back of the stands, and I watched these guys in the kick-in doing things, and I'll never forget. I remember the goalkeeper rolling a ball out to Hinto. The great left winger, a great left foot, and he pretended to shoot, and he made the ball spin back to him, And I'd never seen this before, and I thought I've got to be able to try and do that. And I went in and tried to do it. I was right-footed to start with. And I thought, well, if he can do it with his left foot, I can do it with my left foot. And that's what I did. I worked harder on my left foot than I did my right, because I knew it wasn't... And I became better on my left foot than I did on my right. And Bobby Charlton's the same. Bobby's naturally right-footed. Not many people know that. We all think of Bobby Charlton with that great left foot shot. That's something he worked on as well. And heading. I mean, I was like 5'0". And I went in the gym every day. We used to have a ball strung up in the gym. And if it was 6 feet off the ground, I used to move it 7 feet off to try and reach it, and spend hours trying to head it. And because I knew what my weaknesses were, and it annoys me today when I see players earning £20,000 a week who can't kick with both feet. I find it amazing that professional footballers can't kick with both feet.
Do you used to show off on the field?
Off, yeah, for sure. I used to lie in bed at night, the night before a game, and I had it all planned what I was going to do. I mean, if I stuck it through the fullback's legs, and if he turned to chase me, I was going to do it again while he was facing his own goal. And my dream would always be to stop the ball on the goal line after going around the keeper and getting down and heading it in. I mean, that was my ultimate dream. And when we played in the European Cup final, when I went round the keeper for the first goal in extra time, I was going to do it. I'd planned it. And the only problem was the keeper got up too quick, so I didn't have time to do it. But I used to do things like that, yeah.
What do you remember of the leaving of Manchester United, of you leaving it, of the moment when you knew that you'd finished there?
Yeah, I left, I think, 72, when Tommy Docherty was in charge. It was sad, but I didn't. I wasn't enjoying playing for them. I really didn't want to play for Tommy Docherty. So the combination, I was playing with a lot of players I considered were bad players. And saying bad compared to playing alongside Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton and Paddy Crerand and Alex Stepney and Bill Foulkes and people like that. I don't know, it's obviously very, very sad. I'd been there since I was a kid of 15.
When you were looking back at the reasons why the career at Old Trafford had finished, what conclusions did you come to about the part you played yourself in your downfall? I'm thinking particularly now of the drinking. I mean, how much was that to do you think, with being unhappy at United, or how much was it due to the fact that you were this great superstar? Well, first of all, when did it start?
Well, I was like all the lads. I mean, when drinking to me was a Saturday night, having like half a dozen lagers. I mean, I didn't. For instance, after a Wednesday night, I didn't go out. I mean, Thursday night was snooker night with the boys. Friday night, I never budged out of Mrs. Fullaway's. You know, people, because of the reputation that was built up over the years, people think I was out the Friday night, early Saturday morning, and then struggling into the ground. I mean, I still hear stories from players and managers telling me about the nights that they went out and stayed out with me until 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I went out and scored a hat-trick, which is totally... I mean, even there, they've got it in here. But I never did. I couldn't do what I did on a Saturday if I was out all week. So my drinking was half a dozen lagers on a Saturday night. But then towards 25, 26, when I felt the team was in decline, that's... whether it was anything to do with the football or not, or I was just my own personal problems off the field, because the alcohol was starting to take over a little bit. I opened a nightclub when I left with some friends, and then we all said it's a social thing, and it was, because I didn't have to worry about anything else except the fact that the club was doing well. I didn't have to get up in the morning and go training, but I was becoming bored, so alcohol was sort of relieving the boredom, I suppose. I started gambling. I was looking for anything to sort of fill the gap that football had left, and obviously was never going to fill the gap. And so for 3 years I was doing the same thing every night and every day.
You were bored, weren't you?
Bored to death, yeah, because I was missing the one thing that gave me a high, and I was looking for other things. The only thing I didn't try was drugs. But I suppose alcohol, if you're talking about drugs, that is a drug anyway. And the gambling started to become a little bit of a drug as well. I couldn't stop gambling. I didn't want to. I couldn't stop drinking, and I didn't want to. And the problem was I didn't have to answer to anybody, because I didn't get up for training. I didn't have to go out and perform in front of 50, 60,000 people. every week. But the boredom was killing me, and so was the booze.
At this period, I mean, what amount were you drinking? Did you recollect? Do you recall?
It was the glass never emptied. It was as simple as that.
You would start with it for breakfast?
As soon as I'd get up, which was usually late. And there was always somewhere. I mean, if you wanted to drink, you'd always find somewhere. The licensing laws were the old ones then, but there was always somewhere. And the funny thing was, I never drank at home, and still don't. But I'd go out and find somewhere, and as soon as I got up, skip breakfast straight into the alcohol. And it could be, leave the casino at 5, and I was always a late drinker somewhere. So it could be 6, 7 in the morning, and go home, sleep, and get up in the morning. The first thing you thought about was going and having a drink.
What about the gambling too? How much did you lose? Did you ever calculate it?
Funny enough, I probably ended up in front in the gambling. And the funny thing was, I used to go to the casino every night with one of my partners in the club. And we'd leave there at 2 o'clock, and from 2 to 4 every night we'd be in the casino, win, lose or draw, and a few bottles of champagne. And we were in there one night and we were losing, and this is, 72? We were losing £17,000 between us, which was a hell of a lot, and we didn't have it. We couldn't have paid it if we'd lost it. And then we had a little bit of a run, and we won £26,000. And the following day I got up, and it frightened me to death, the switch around. And I thought, well, it could have been another 26 on top of the 17 we could have lost, and we'd have been in serious trouble. And I stopped then. I mean, I still like a little bit today, but 10 quid now. I panic if I lose a tenner, which is nice. And but that frightened me. So with that plus the booze, I mean, the whole thing was I was turned into a cabbage. And luckily, as I say, America came up, and I shut off there when I was 21.
Why luckily? I mean, what happened in America?
Well, I lasted. I went to LA, and there were no problems. It was a great life. I was living down on the beach with a pal of mine. We were both playing for the same team. We were both single lads. It was heaven for us. We were training hard. I got really, really fit again. I mean, I was training every day, and I got into racquetball. I was playing that every afternoon, and got really super fit and enjoying the games. And I say big crowds, but then I moved on to Fort Lauderdale. I had a bus stop with a coach in LA, moved to Fort Lauderdale. I had another bus stop with a coach in Fort Lauderdale, moved to San. Now the settled life had become unsettled again. And by the time I got to San Jose, I'd also married Angela, and but it was the nomad had started again. I was flying here, there, and everywhere, and then all the top players started to leave the States. So the crowds were dying down. The best players were leaving. All the reasons I'd gone there for the buzz were disappearing, and I started really. That was the serious time in San Jose. I mean, I was begging, stealing, and borrowing just to have a drink, and I was still earning tremendous money.
You literally?
Yeah.
Stealing?
I was, yeah, from my own wife. I was. I mean, I remember one night she used to park. She drove a Jeep, and she used to keep loose change in the car for parking meters and stuff like that, and little bits of shopping. And I was actually going to the car and pinching money out of there. And then I'm going off for a drink, and sometimes staying out days at a time. Poor old Angela, what she went through. I mean, she had come looking for me at night, and she'd remember driving. I mean, and I'd find places that that you wouldn't know existed to have a drink. And she was coming looking for me one night and driving. And the place I found was about 5 miles from home, and it was unusual because it was pouring with rain. And it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. She was out searching for me. She said she remembers driving along the road and seeing this, what she thought was an old man hunched over, soaking wet, and it was me trying to get home. And can you imagine what she felt?
Did you take the cure in America for the first time?
Yeah, that's the first time I went in for treatment. I was in a place full of strangers, and I went through it, and it was funny because I sailed through it. I thought it was easy. And after I'd been there about 3 weeks. I'll never forget it. And I was walking past the administrative block, and there was a guy in there, an Irish guy. And as I walked past, he went, "George, come here." So I went in, and he said, "You might be fooling everybody else." He said, "You ain't fooling me." He said, "When you get out of here," he said, "you'll be back here within 6 months." He says, I don't think you're fooling everybody. He said, maybe all that lot, but not me. He said, I've been through it. And he was right.
Really?
Yeah. I came out and they went, well done, you've been terrific. I went out, and 6 months later, I lasted for about 6 months, and then it was what they call the dry drunk syndrome. I wasn't drinking, but I was craving for it. So I went back in, lasted about 20 days, and then came out lasted about a year. So I went in 3 times, and then decided to come back here. And Angela and she couldn't take it anymore. In the meantime, Callum had arrived. So. Yeah. So.
Did he see you drunk?
Yeah.
How's that?
He was only a kid then. When I came back, he was only about a year old when I decided to come back here in '81, with no idea what I was going to do. I basically got 2 suitcases, a couple of quid in my pocket, went stayed with my in-laws down in South End. No idea what I was going to do, and started doing a little bit of television work and started getting back into the public eye. But the booze was still there. It wasn't going away. The problem was that it controlled me totally. I mean, when I was drinking, I didn't give a toss about anything, whether it was family or friends. Well, I did, but I didn't want to believe I did. And the worst problem was that I didn't care about myself. I couldn't care less. I mean, I wasn't bothered whether I woke up in the morning or not. And sometimes I wish I didn't.
Did you ever feel suicidal?
I think you do. I think when your brain's that muddled and scrambled from whatever you're taking, I think everyone goes through that, especially if you don't know what you're doing with your life. Yeah. It can be very depressing. But the thing that kept me going is I kept thinking I'm going to miss too much.
How do you regard yourself now then as a drinker? Are you still are you an alcoholic, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, looking at it today, I've always said, and I stood up and said I was an alcoholic because it was controlling me. It was taking over my life. I lost, my marriage broke up. I didn't lose Callum because we're close. I lost a hell of a lot of money. I was made bankrupt. I had problems all over the place. And today I don't have any problems. The alcohol's still there. It ain't going to go away, that's for sure. And the difference is today, I believe, getting back to I find it difficult now to say I'm an alcoholic because I don't drink every day. And if I don't feel like I drink, I don't drink. And if I feel like I drink, I do. But the big difference is that very rarely today does it affect any other area of my life.
What about the other thing the tabloid press used to love about you, and you used to love as well, of course, and still do, which is the company of beautiful women? To be frank, for it crudely, I've seen some guys who can pull, but nobody like you. And I just wondered what, two things I wonder. Well, no, one thing I wonder more than anything. I mean, does it affect your attitude toward women when it seems to me that what the rest of us might have had to struggle to do, it came so easily to you in a sense?
I don't know. To me, it was just. I was going to say it's a bit like playing football because it came so naturally. I didn't really have to work too hard at it. I wasn't in a bad situation when you look at it. Particularly early on, and I don't think I'm ugly. I might not be the best looking guy in the world, but I'm not exactly ugly. And I had plenty of money. I like good food, good wine. I like traveling. I like the best hotels. I like traveling first class, and I didn't see much point in doing it on your own. So it was better off to have somebody with you. And a nice compliment at 50 is that a lovely 24-year-old woman is willing to share her life with me. So maybe it hasn't all gone.
But did you ever really want to get married?
I always said that I would never get married. Well, I always said up until I was about 30. Nah. I always thought this is it. It's great. And single. I can pull any bird I want, and I don't have to worry about relationships. And if it doesn't work from either side, then that's it. And there's another one around the corner. And when I did get married to Angela, and Callum came along, I thought I never thought it was going to finish, but whether it was the alcohol or whether it would have finished anyway. And you have relationships, and you hope they never end. But who knows? It's another thing. It doesn't bother me one way or the other, whether it lasts or it doesn't.
Really?
Because, well, what I'm saying is if it doesn't work from one partner or the other, then there's no point in carrying on.
How many girlfriends have you had? Do you know?
No. I bought a 4-poster once, and I started having little notches every one.
Oh, you did.
It collapsed after a week.
This is a serious inquiry, George. The nation demands to know.
I've no idea. It's been a few. It's been a few.
How many times have you been in love?
A couple of thousand, I suppose. Let's say I've loved a couple of thousand. I've been in love once. I'm madly in love with Alex. I always say, you always say you're in love. You've got to, haven't you? But most of the time you don't mean it.
George, when you look back on your life so far, what do you make of the time that you spent in prison? What effect did that have on you?
Well, I hope a profound. It wasn't a very pleasant experience. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I did wrong, so I had to be punished. I think maybe a little bit harshly. So again, being who I am can work both ways, and I think it worked against me on this occasion. I don't think it was. The worst part was I got in a car and drove when I'd been drinking. I'm the worst in the world if I'm with friends who want to drive when they've had a drink. I'll hide their keys, and yet I was stupid enough to do it. I went I spent 2 months, the first week in Pentonville, which was not a pleasant experience. It was over Christmas as well. And then I went to Ford Open Prison. It was 2 months. And it was 2 months where I had to sit, mostly almost 24 hours a day and sit and look at myself and what the hell I'd got myself into. It was, you think back to between, the 63 and 73, 10 years of at the top, no matter which way you looked at it. And here I was, not so long afterwards. Talk about rock bottom when it came to drink. This was ended up in prison. So I had a long time to sit and look at myself and try and figure out what the hell was happening. And that might have been part of the turnaround, maybe the start of it. I hope it was.
When you look back on your career, you mentioned there that your career had finished at 27. Well, in a sense, we haven't seen the best of you, have we?
No, I hadn't peaked.
It's a thought, isn't it? Do you ever think about it?
I do, actually. I do, yeah. I do. I get annoyed with myself because I think I actually quite enjoy watching myself playing, and I think I missed the best part of it. And yeah, I do. I often wonder, what. The problem would have been that if we could have kept that great side together, for 3 or 4 more years, what would it have been like? Or if I'd have stayed on with a side as good as that for another 3 or 4 years, even longer. If I'd have kept fit, I could have played until I was. Otherwise, there's still players today playing 36, 37. I could have been playing sweeper until I was the age I am today.
A famous line, where did it all go wrong, George?
I love it. People still say that to me. Where did it all go wrong?
For the few people who have not heard it, tell us the story.
Yeah, I'd been working in Birmingham, and I was with a young lady who was Miss World, Mary Stavin, who was considered probably one of the most beautiful. And to cut it down briefly, I'd been working, and we'd gone out for the night, and gone off to the casino, and I'd won a fortune. It was something like £25,000, and we got back to the hotel, and the little night porter from Belfast staggering around the lobby. So we'd gone up to the room, and I'd thrown the 25,000 on a 4-poster bed, and Mary had gone in the bathroom and come out in this see-through negligee, this beautiful Miss World, and the little porter staggered in with a bottle of Dom Perignon, put it down the side of the bed, and he's seen the £25,000 on the bed, and this beautiful Miss World with the long blonde hair sitting on the edge of the 4-poster bed. It's a bottle of Dom Perignon, and he's backing out of the room, and as he's looking for the handle, he's turned around, had another look at the bottle of Dom Perignon, the £25,000 on the bed, and this beautiful Miss World, and he said to me, "Mr. Best," he said, "where the hell did it all go wrong?" And I meant it as well. And it's like today, I still get people saying to me, "What happens? Would you change this? Would you change that? Where did it all go wrong? You could have done this, you could have done that." And I said, I've done it all. I said, I'm still enjoying my life, so that's the bottom line.
George Best, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Michael.
Euro 96. The BBC presents the greatest sporting event in England for 30 years. Whoever you are, wherever you are, BBC Television and Radio bring you complete match-by-match coverage of the 1996 European Championship. BBC Sport, in the home of football, in the heart of the nation.
You're watching BBC Two. This is Best Night.
In a moment, George's best match, the classic 1966 game against Benfica. But first, King George gives his verdict on his best goal.
Okay, so which is my favourite goal? Well, it's not the lob over Big Pat Jennings, my pal.
Comes the best.
It's not the drag back at the Dell against Southampton.
Charlton.
It's not the goal it should have been against England at Windsor Park, Belfast.
Banks being driven left, and was that a foul? The whistle hasn't gone. Best.
It's not even the one that put us 2-1 up against Benfica in the cup final at Wembley. No, the one I picked was against Chelsea in the League Cup at Old Trafford. I picked the ball up just inside my own half, taking it through. Chopper Harris came in with one of his usual mild challenges. I rode it, took it around Peter Bonetti, and I think there was a defender stood on the line, but I managed to slip it past him, went down on my knees to celebrate. The reason I was celebrating was because I hadn't scored for quite a while, so that's the one that I picked.
Best is up front. There he is, the defence split. Can he do it? He surely must.
Well, the winner gets a signed ball and shirt, which is being modelled here by a beautiful young lady who just happens to be my wife, Alex. So that was my best goal. Now, coming up is my best match.
Best.
Benfica playing all in white kick-off in this absolutely packed Stadium of Light here at Lisbon, and already Benfica getting a free kick, and Eusebio a little worried the way he was brought down by Canelli. Now the magnitude of Manchester United's task you can gather from the fact that Benfica have won 18 straight European Cup ties at home. They drew their very first and won every one since, and in only 3 have they failed to get 3 goals. There's Torres, 6'4" of centre forward. Manchester United have fantastic support here, but dwarfed naturally by the 70-odd thousand Benfica fans. Manchester United with a 3-2 lead from the first leg, but facing great task. Jose Augusto leaving it for his captain, Coluna. Dunn. Carvem with the throw for Benfica. Tremendously experienced team. Gusto Silva, who didn't play at Old Trafford, taking the throw for Benfica. Benfica will use the towering height of the centre forward Torres a lot in their attacks. Now Law, Manchester United have said they just don't know how to defend. By that they mean they don't know how to go all on the defensive. So they're going all out to attack. This is Torres, out keeping with him. United are taking it quite calmly, taking it easily, not rushing things. The crowd's so great, they've burst through at some parts, they've had to be taken onto the track, others are having to be let in through the players' entrance. Heard victory by Costa Pereira. Warm, balmy night, perfect for football. Torres with the throw for Benfica. Augusto Silva. Oh, that's a bad ball. Bad ball from Pinto. Germano, but here comes Best. Now to Hurd. Shrill whistle then, but it came from a spectator. This is going to be a little awkward if anybody has got a whistle in the crowd. A bounce to Creran. And here comes Nobby Stiles. Not far from Eusebio. Eusebio's the man covering him now. Stiles' job is to keep Eusebio quiet tonight. Coluna wearing an armband to signify his captain. Four times European Cup finalists, Benfica, twice winners, twice losers. Manchester United, twice semi-finalists in two European Cup competitions. Now it's Best to Charlton. But 5 minutes gone, no score. Jose Augusto. Normally we know him as outside right, and a free kick given against Manchester United. And Creran getting in a spot of trouble with Mr. Lobello, the Italian referee, for arguing. Free kick to Benfica when the Manchester United defensive wall is not far enough back. Jose Augusto standing in front of the ball, teeing it up for Eusebio. Coluna. Oh, beautifully intercepted by Best. A great little player this boy is. Pinto fouling Charlton. Yes. Comes straight into his chest. A quick goal is essential for Benfica if they want to get back into this game. Trail 3-2 from the first leg. Dunn with the free kick. Up goes Best. He's scored. Best has got a goal for Manchester United. After 7 minutes play, Manchester United fans go mad as Best puts them in the lead. Now then, Benfica are right up against it. They trail by 2 on the tie. Eusebio. Remember that not even Real Madrid been able to come here and beat Benfica on their own ground. Simoes, the outside left. Eusebio, the first time we've seen him with a really decent pass. Simoes, and the 1-2. Not paying off. And in trouble between Eusebio and Styles. And Styles is down. Eusebio is limping. And a confident cry of champions, champions coming from the Manchester United fans. And a foul on Eusebio. Charge in his back. Jose Augusto going to take the free kick for Benfica. Interesting to see how Benfica react to this quick goal against them. Are they the sort of team that can be a great team coming from behind, picking themselves off the floor? Beautifully played by Brennan. Out to Law. Here's Germano. Oh, a late tackle by Herd, bringing down Carvin. Carvin, an incredible player, 11 years with the club. He's played in all the European Cup finals Benfica have been in, once at outside left, once at right half, twice at right back. Eusebio out to Simoes, many people believe to be the finest outside left in Europe. It's not counting George Best, I'd say. Oh, to Brennan, that's a good ball to Herd. To Law, to Herd. Connelly moved into the middle. And here's Creran moving up. Good attacking, fluent football by Manchester United. Charlton. And offside. Best is offside. Eusebio, who before the match got the golden ball as they awarded the #1 player in Europe. Eusebio, and that's the sort of great player he is. Snaps up 1/10 of a chance. So far, against all the forecasts, Manchester United have been controlling this second leg. Charlton back to Brennan. Now Kaluna is going to have to pull out some magic this evening. Pinto, the right half-back, wears number 5 to Cruz, left back. Well, Manchester United will be able to stand all those whistles. Here comes Best again. What a player this boy is! He's got another! What a player! 12 minutes gone and Best surely has now finished the tie. 2-0, Manchester United lead. And the almost cheeky chant of easy, easy as the Manchester United fans keep on their feet now. Manchester United 2-0 in the lead. 5-2 up in the tie. Here's Creran to the hero of the evening, Best. Out to Kennelly. Will be a great performance now if Benfica can lift themselves off the floor. They've given no sign of it yet. Charlton. Simoe is going away. And Bobby Charlton back with the defence. This is Germano. Manchester United must feel that a great weight is off them now. Benfica really have to come out and attack. And attack brilliantly if they're going to pull this game round. Up to Hurd. At the moment, Manchester United playing as if they're going to increase their lead rather than let Benfica get into the match. This is Law. To Hurd, and it's Kennelly. It's another one. This is going to be a rout. I don't think that Benfica have ever been demoralized like this. Three goals to nil, and it must all be over now. Not even the most optimistic, enthusiastic Manchester United fan could have expected this. 3 goals to nil, Manchester United lead, and only a quarter of an hour gone. So surely they are in an unassailable position. 6-2 up on aggregate. Eusebio. Eusebio, the great hero of Benfica. Manchester United are playing this great football of theirs, which brings them now 10 men back in defence. Any moment now they'll break into attack, and they'll have about 6 forwards up attacking the Benfica goal. And here comes Best, giving it to Charlton, out now to Hurd. To Best. The control of this boy. Kennelly. Creran moving up to join in the fun now. Goal kick to Benfica. Torres to Eusebio. Eusebio and Stiles clashing, not for the first time. The referee deciding to take over. Manchester United now with 11 men back in defence, as Benfica are in this offensive position of having this free kick. Hit the post. An incredible player, this Eusebio. Creran, but it's thrown out of Charlton. Now to Law. That's a... No, it's not a corner. Simoe. This is Eusebio. Fuchs seemed to take an awful long time before he hooked that one clear. Augusto Silva. Was it a corner? Linesman seems to flag for one, yes. Mr. Lobello, the Italian referee, has given one. Well, that's how demoralized Benfica are. I can't really remember one occasion on which Benfica seemed likely to score, with the exception of that free kick from Eusebio that hit the post. They haven't carved out one real goal chance. Eusebio. But Benfica moving, thinking, acting so much more slowly than Manchester United. Corner to Benfica. Cruz and Dunn, leaving it now to his captain Law, and the whistle goes for half-time after perhaps the greatest 45 minutes of vintage Manchester United we've seen for a long, long time. Manchester United leading 3-0 and now virtually in the semi-final of the European Cup. Manchester United start the second half, 3-0 in the lead, and they've more than wiped out the bitter memory of their last competitive appearance in this city, when they came here with a 3-goal lead and were beaten by 5 goals by Sporting Club of Portugal. And tonight, Manchester United have been as brilliant as they were bad on that night. Torres to Eusebio. Augusto Silva, the outside right. Jose Augusto. Benfica Torres. Pinto. Well, the chance was there. The chance was there for Benfica. And you'd think they'd not only scored, but scored the winning goal if you listen to the crowd. All that happened is that they did at least have a shot at goal. Germano. Up comes the left back, Cruz. That was a very late tackle by Cruz. On the right back, Brennan, the left back rather, Dunn. And Dunn is all right again. Best to Creran. Best Creran have had superb games now. Law to number 10, Hurd. Beautifully taken by Costa Pereira. This is Simwes. Jose Augusto. Compared with Manchester United, slow motion stuff by Benfica. And an